Audio test, audio. Okay, that's working. We're just getting started. Just give us just a minute, y'all, and we'll be ready to go. Just got to do the normal setup stuff. Should be gotta log in on TikTok, and then we can get going. I really shouldn't have started the live yet, but that's okay. All right, we'll be ready on TikTok in just a moment. Send out the announcement on Discord. Welcome, welcome. If you're just joining us, just give us just a minute to get started. Oh no. No? How could you just say no? Audio should be up and running. We should be, let's get that virtual camera going, and then I think we will be live. On TikTok, we're already live on YouTube, you guys already know that. Welcome, welcome. Howdy, howdy. Finishing this episode of Breaking Bad. Go for it. Go for it. All right. TikTok has just finished starting up. Hopefully, connection's not too bad. I think I need to close out of some things though, because my CPU is Obama. Obama was the worst president. Oh yeah, OBS is eating up a lot of processing power. Let's turn off some of those flames. Why not? Why don't we? Maybe we close out of some of these Chromie boys. Howdy, howdy. I'm never gonna read these papers. Let's just close out of them. Welcome from TikTok. Welcome, welcome. Hope everybody's having a good day. I think we may be, yeah, we're still pushing 100% CPU. See what the creationists will bring up. I just started. We just went live, so yeah, no worries. Don't worry about that. Encoding overloaded. Turning down video settings or using a faster encoding. Yeah, we should probably do that, huh? That's a smart thing to do. Output. Unfortunately, I don't think I actually can do that right now. I don't think I can change my encoding. Well, we'll do our best. We'll make do with what we can. Maybe we change our encoding on TikTok because that's the one that's not going to the gonna get saved. Give me just a minute, guests. I just want to make sure that this is running well. And then we'll bring somebody up, okay? Yes, I know. High computer load detected. I'm aware. I was there. I was there when the code was written. Let's just close out of Discord, maybe. Maybe that'll do it. Maybe that's a good idea. Just close out of everything. We'll turn... We'll get there. We'll get there eventually. Close out of that. Close out of that. We cannot change the video, the quality, while we're live. Bummer. Oh boy. All right, do we just close out of Chrome? I think we just closed out of Chrome. There we go. Hopefully that'll buy us some CPU time. Okay, there's exactly one Chrome browser open, and it's necessary. All right, well, we'll make do with what we have. I know it's a bit delayed, a bit laggy, but... All right, let's bring up the first guest. As long as TikTok will respond. No sound detected. That's because I wasn't talking. All right, here we go. We got a guest. We got it. We finally got it. Okay, great.
Oh, yo, my son.
How's it going?
Blitz Yo, Blitz, remember me or not?
A little bit. I remember your username anyway. I don't remember what you believe. Want to tell me?
You know the album guy. Yeah, bro, I'm here with a new argument.
All right, what's the argument? Again. All right.
Hey, I'm playing. So the argument is right. So like, what's your thoughts on like the fine-tuning argument?
I think it's a terrible argument that relies on fundamental assumptions about the world that we just can't justify.
I don't think that you think it's a bad argument.
I do think it's a bad argument.
Why do you think it's a bad argument?
Because it relies on the fundamental assumption that our current understanding of physics is the final understanding of physics.
No, it doesn't. That's cap.
It absolutely does.
No, because the fine-tuning argument just presupposes that our universe, like I think constants within our universe are finely tuned, so that like even the slightest change causes an alternation where us as humans and like all of creation within the universe, like physical creation, wouldn't be the case, you know?
That's yeah, and that relies on the assumption that the fundamental constants are actually fundamental.
What do you mean? Wait, say that again?
That relies on the idea that the fundamental constants are actually fundamental.
What? They literally are. So, like, are you saying
that's exactly what I'm saying. It relies on this idea that the current physics in the year 2025 is the final say, that there will be nothing deeper. We'll never learn anything more about physics. We won't go deeper. We'll never figure out anything else.
No, that's not what it says.
No, it absolutely because what if the constants that you think are fundamental aren't actually fundamental, and they're determined by some much smaller set of things that are not finely tuned.
Wait, Blitz. I'll explain why they're fundamental by my set of logics, right? The reason they need to be fundamental. So when we speak about the laws, right, like this fundamental, we're not specifically speaking about all of physics or all of science.
We're talking about the constants, the quote-unquote fundamental constants.
yeah, the constants. The constants can be like, for example, fundamental. It doesn't mean that we're presupposing all of physics and all of
things. It's presupposing that the fundamental constants are genuinely fundamental, and that's unjustified.
So, Dr. Blitz, you don't think, like, for example, the fundamental, like, let's say constants of gravity are not, like, fundamental to our universe?
No.
Or not absolute?
No, I think that they're likely determined by something deeper.
Wait, so for example, for gravity, right? So, like, what will be the case? And I guess, like, what will you presuppose that it's, like, you know, like, what do you think that's deeper that makes gravity?
So 150 years ago, it was believed that Fraunhofer lines, these are particular lines in the spectrum of the sun, were specially determined because they were in very, very specific places. But then we figured out that that's just because of the structure of the hydrogen atom, that's why you get the Fraunhofer lines there. And in the 1930s, it was believed by people like Dirac and Fermi that the reason why nuclear decays occur is because of the rate at which nuclear decays occur is controlled by something called the Fermi constant. We later figured out that the Fermi constant is just a number that's calculated from something more fundamental.
Wait. Isn't there multiple types of decay, like beta decay, alpha decay, and like so
they didn't know about a whole lot of them, and this was about a specific type of thing called beta decay. They thought beta decay was controlled by a fundamental constant. They called it the Fermi constant.
No.
And then we figured out that it wasn't actually a fundamental constant. It was just something that was determined by something far deeper.
I have a quick. How can a decay be a constant? I just want to ask you that.
It shows up in the equations. If you look up the Fermi constant, then you can see that there's this number that shows up in the equations for beta decay.
Wait, no, Dr. Blitz, but like for example, if you use like basic logic, yeah, decay is just the half time it takes for like a particle like to decay, like half of its energy being gone. That's what decay is. Like a particle just loses energy, you know?
So the
So it's not
the
nothing to do with
they
constants.
were
It's
they
nothing
were
to do
studying
with
something a little bit more complicated than that. Unfortunately, they were studying something called half or not, sorry, not half lives. Well, they were studying the half lives. They were predicting the half lives of various particles. This isn't like about like nuclear decay.
Mm, Dr. Blitz. Wait, I'm playing. Okay, so about the constants, right? So like you still think that they're like not like absolutely set? Like let's say if we say a constant of let's say I'll use the gravity one as an example. You don't think the constants of gravity are set to the point where even the slightest change might alter all of existence?
Well, no, no. If it were possible, and I don't even know if it's possible that it could be changed, that it could be different. But if it were possible that the gravitational constant was like twice as big or half as big, the universe would
It's
have
a
still been
hypothetical,
fine.
yeah, of course.
The universe would have
No,
still
it
been fine.
wouldn't. What?
Sorry?
Imagine, yeah. So like, imagine if like, gravity right now, yeah. Imagine with like
Yep.
two times, I guess strength. Bro, we were like flattening the ground. We can't even
Well, yeah,
move.
but life would have evolved differently to be
Yeah, I
compatible
know.
with that gravity,
Yeah.
right?
No. But then again, if you say that, like, I don't think it's only about like our planet. Yeah. There's many stuff like within our universe that wouldn't function how it normally
No,
does.
no, no.
And
But
those
the
are
point is that you can rescale the gravitational constant, like big G, not little g. You can rescale big G by like 50% in either direction, and the universe would be fine.
how is there any like I guess you could say hypothesis of that?
Sorry, any what?
Hypothesis. I don't know what the fuck the word is properly,
What do you
but
mean
yeah, like
hypothesis? Like
hypothesis.
this is just
Yeah,
something you can
hypothesis.
calculate. Like you can still have stars forming, you can still have like planets forming, and life. Like
No, I'm pretty sure those criteria is when you do that to gravity, stars cannot form, right? Because for stars
no,
to
it's just
form,
not
yeah.
true. No, you it can. I
How
think
can they? How
you
can
might even get an order of magnitude out of the gravitational constant, but I don't remember the details off the top of my head for that one.
they? Tripping, bro.
Sorry?
Yo, doctor. Yeah, nothing. Okay, so you're saying okay, beside the gravity, I guess gravitational constant. What about like other constants of the universe,
They all
right?
have a range of about an order of magnitude or so.
What?
Yeah.
No, what did you say? I didn't listen.
Like they all have a fairly large range. It's just the range of possible values is perhaps even larger if you consider that there's actually
Well,
a large number
why
of
is it
possible
so?
values.
Like if you search it up, there's like lots of scientists that say that like even if you change like a lot of the fundamental constants, they cause like large amounts of destruction to the universe.
Yeah, if you like
If it's a
multiply if you multiply the gravitational force by like 1,000, then yeah, obviously.
not gravitational, there's like many other
If you
constants
multiplied
besides
if you
gravity.
multiplied the mass of the top quark by 1,000, then yeah, it's gonna be. But like that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about like doubling it, and you don't have an issue.
Bro, stop, bro. So like, okay, yeah, no, I'm not saying only about multiply. Let's say if you decreased it even by a little, like
Yeah,
division, yeah,
let's
you
say you
divided
decrease
it.
it by a factor of two, you'll still be fine.
No, it's not all about gravity, right? There's like many
I
other
wasn't talking about
constants.
gravity. I was talking about the mass of the up quark or the up quark.
Yeah. Mm. So okay, I have a question for you then, Blitz. Right?
Hmm.
Let's say if you think that the constants can be changing and stuff, right?
I don't think that
So
they
I
can.
just
Well, rather, I don't know if they can.
so if you say they're fundamental, that means they're not changing. Then later,
No, no,
earlier you were saying stuff like
So no, you're misunderstanding. Just because something's not fundamental doesn't mean it can change. So Fermi's constant is not fundamental, but it doesn't change. It's just based on something deeper.
you don't think it maybe changes throughout like I guess that period of time. We had an
No,
argument with time
the
itself.
Fermi constant does not change throughout time.
What is that Fermi constant again?
I can pull up the exact number for you if you want. But the Fermi constant,
Like
it
what
tells
is
you about beta decay, if I remember correctly.
beta decay? Wait, doesn't beta decay just happen like in a natural process where it loses energy?
Beta decay is a type of interaction. So the Fermi constant is it's in units of inverse joules, so it's 4.5 times 10 to the 14th per joule squared. That's the Fermi constant. And it controls, in particular, if I remember correctly, and I'm just double checking because I don't want to say the wrong thing. Yeah, it describes, or it's the coupling constant in the Fermi theory of beta decay. So you have one neutron go in, a proton, an electron, and a neutrino go out, and this constant tells you essentially how frequently that happens and under what conditions.
It just happens if this has like, it's a half-time decay.
It's not that simple. Quantum mechanics is a little bit complicated.
Bro, half the decays are not based on quantum mechanics.
Are you high?
Like
Wait, you don't think nuclear decay is based on quantum mechanics? Because they absolutely are.
It might, I was let me rephrase. It might be based on it, but like the entire thing is not based on quantum mechanics. Because
it's literally all quantum mechanics. So radioactive decay is only quantum mechanics. You can't have radioactive decay without quantum mechanics.
Wait, so like for example, let's say if we talk about like gamma, beta, and like alpha.
Yes, all of those decays are the result of quantum mechanical interactions. All of them.
How are they based on quantum mechanics? Can you give me like a...
Every single nuclear decay process is a quantum mechanical decay process. So you have quantum tunneling. Quantum tunneling is one way that you can have alpha decay. Beta decay is a process in which a proton undergoes a quantum mechanical decomposition into a neutron, an electron, and a neutrino, which are all quantum mechanical objects. Gamma radiation is what happens when the quantum shells describing the nucleus change energy levels. This is all quantum mechanics.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. So let's say it's quantum mechanics, yeah. So I just wanna know like how. Okay, besides these fundamental things, how do you know that it might not change throughout a specific period of time? Let's say billions of years.
Well,
because
the point is we've never measured them to change. So that's at least good inductive reason to think that they don't change.
So let's say fundamental constants such as gravity would throughout time. You think maybe it changes?
No,
let's
say
if there's a specific.
I don't think that they change.
Okay, how about like particle charges? Like for example, for electrons, like what? It's like 6 multiplied to 10 to the power of something. I forgot.
I don't think any of those change. Why are we talking about them changing over time?
Because if they do change over time, then it doesn't hold with their big first premise.
What?
If it does change, right? It doesn't hold with like where you said like some stuff about like fundamental particles do not change and stays constant throughout time. Because you did say that.
Wait, no, I didn't. I mean, it's true, but I didn't say that.
I mean, you didn't say it, but you implied it.
Look, so the question of fine-tuning is about fundamental constants. And if the constants aren't fundamental, then the whole argument of fine-tuning just doesn't work. It's just invalid.
Yes, it does. No, because fine-tuning, the thing is, right? When you
fine-tuning requires the current constants that we know of to be fundamental constants, to be genuinely fundamental, that there's nothing deeper than them.
No, it doesn't need. It doesn't say all the constants have to be fundamental.
No, it's like there's like 29 constants or so that it requires that they're all fundamental. That all 29 of them are fundamental.
So what's the issue with them for example being fundamental?
We just don't have any. We don't have any reason to think that this is the final say. Right. Like if we haven't finished physics.
So what do you think?
If we haven't finished physics, then there's no reason to think that these are the final constants, final fundamental constants.
You have an issue. You have an issue, right? You can
have an issue.
Like as you said, multiple. What's I said that you could have like a multiple fundamental constants, right?
Yeah, there's like 29. There's 29 constants that we call fundamental. Yeah, but my point is I doubt that any of them are actually fundamental.
Can I speak, right?
Yeah,
so,
sure.
As you said, yeah. So as I said, right now we have about 29 fundamental constants for now, yeah. But later on we can probably find more. Let's say if there is.
No.
What's your issue?
We would have less. What? Not more. We would have less.
What do you mean we would have less? Say so.
So for example, several of those constants are just ratios of masses. So it's like the ratio of the up quark mass to the down quark mass, or the ratio of the top quark mass to the down quark mass, or whatever. They're just ratios of masses. But if all of those masses are just determined by a single number, well, now you lose like 5 constants.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, we aren't at that point. I don't think we are. we ever are
The
going to be like
point
20.
is,
Because
we
again,
can't
what you mean
say that the constants are fundamental if we're not done with physics.
no, but then that argument is asked because for you to say that, oh, like we have to finish all of physics to say like one main point. No, like throughout like the, I guess, evolution of physics, you can find set stuff. You don't need to finish all of physics to come to a final
So
conclusion.
if you
You can
were
do it
if
through
you
the
were making
process.
this argument 150 years ago, you would have been saying that like you would have been saying that like the Fraunhofer lines were evidence of fine tuning, and then you would have been wrong 50 years later
How so?
because they're not evidence of fine tuning.
That's cap.
Like
Because they
they're
are.
just not. You don't even know what the Fraunhofer lines are.
Nah. Yo, Dr. Blitz, I'm gonna just say this. I'm trolling you, bro.
All right, well then I'm
I
gonna
love
kick
you.
you.
Man. I love you. I love you.
Econo, if there are any mods out there, ban him, block him. He's gone. Get rid of him. All right, let's talk to Robert. Robert, how's it going?
Hi, I'm on the same page as you are. I'm an atheist, so it might be a little off topic, but I have a question. Can I ask you that question?
Nope, you have to do that on Wednesdays.
Wednesdays.
Yep.
That'll be quick. That'll be quick. I don't know if you're gonna take.
All right,
that.
I'll give you 10 seconds.
Okay. Well, the 10 seconds is too too short.
You're
Maybe
wasting time.
Maybe I ask you on Wednesday then. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Take care.
Okay.
It says join if you're opposition. Right. That's today's subject. So if you're not opposition, then you're in the wrong place. All right, let's bring jump on it up. Jump on it. Jump on it.
Hi, Dr. Blitz.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, and you?
I'm doing all right. What do you believe, and how are you going to convince me of it?
So I do believe in God. I was an atheist, and by the way, I really like your videos. I like your contents, and I was surprised to see that you're an atheist. So basically, like my argument, well, not my argument, but what convinced me is that when I was in my first year of engineering and I did chemistry, I realized that it was a study of relationships, like all of their different atomic configurations and so on are made in such a way so that they can have relationships with each other, and that sparked something in my mind. I told myself that the Almighty, the All-Knowing, the Everlasting, and so on. What do you want from a bag of blood and bones? And it dawned on me that it was a relationship. And when I was digging a bit further into our engineering, entropy, and all that stuff, and all of the physics and so on, I realized that it it was just waiting to be discovered, right? So like all of our modeling and so on works because it was designed for us to just find it. Do you see where I'm coming from, or am I
Well,
going on
I
a
mean,
tangent here?
I can understand why you think that. I just am not convinced that it's true.
You don't think that if something is modeled, it was designed?
Well, I mean, we came up with the models, right?
Yeah, but the models work.
Well, yeah, because we threw out the ones that didn't work.
What do you mean?
I mean, so almost every single model that humans have ever come up with doesn't work. It's just the ones that stick around that do.
Yeah, but like all of our kinematic equations, all of that.
You know that people thought for like 2,000 years that if you just push something, it'll stop eventually, even if no forces act on it. That was
That I didn't
Aristotle.
know.
That was Aristotle. Aristotle thought that, and it was wrong. But people thought it for like 2,000 years.
He thought that if you keep pushing something, eventually it'll just stop moving?
Yeah, that things have a tendency to be stopped. And also, he thought that things just want to be on the ground, so that's why things fall.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay,
like,
well,
the
I
point
mean,
is that people have, like, models. People had models that didn't work.
look, I agree with you that some ideas and some thoughts are flawed, but so like science also, that's how science work, right? We do through
Mm-hmm.
testing and observation, and when we see that it doesn't work, then we update our model until we actually find, I'm going to say the word, the truth behind how things work.
Well, yeah, that's like the whole point, right? The whole point is that almost every model is wrong. Sometimes we get the right one though. But to say
Correct.
that that means that like that's the one that's must have been designed. We're just coming up with models that, and then we're just coming up with a whole bunch of models, and some of them will match what we see, and some of them won't. So we just keep the ones that match.
Right. And like again, I'm coming from a pure heart. Like I really was atheist back in the day. I was like, there's no way God would allow all of these things to happen and those things to happen and so on. And then I told myself, who am I to know or to even think of or fathom what the creator of all of this is thinking and wanting and so on. Like we're here only for like 80 years or 90 years if we're lucky, in the utmost cold of space and the absolute incredible heat that's in the universe and so on. We're on a floating rock spinning at a certain speed, at a certain distance, that has like normal pressure. Like imagine the incredible amounts of pressure in the universe and all
Mm-hmm.
those temperatures and so on. And we're just there in that perfect Goldilocks area where like water could exist in all three phases. And so for me, it's really hard to imagine that this is just pure luck. It's
Well, it's not luck. The universe is just really big, and there are a few places that have all of the right conditions. We happen to be one of them.
right. I mean, we still haven't found life anywhere else, even though we
No,
could.
but we found habitable zones in other places. We found water in other places. We've found atmospheres in other places.
Right. Well, we found like planets that were at the right distance away from their stars
Yeah,
and so on. That's what you're saying.
yeah.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
point is that there's a trillion planets in the observable universe, and the entire universe is likely much larger. The
Right.
odds of the odds of there being at least one planet that is in the habitable zone, that has an atmosphere, has water, etc., it's basically 100%.
Well, yeah, I agree. The odds of us being alone are almost zero, 100%. That's I agree with you. But the fact that we still haven't seen any kind of life out there
Well, we've only really
is
looked in like 3 places at best.
right. Right.
Like we've looked on the
And
moon, we've looked on Mars, we've sort of looked on Venus, but like that's it.
I hear you. I hear you. Another thing that you might find really ridiculous and so on, but that kind of um, so like my mom is Jewish, right? So I'm by birth Jewish,
Mm-hmm.
and there's this thing in the Torah that says that that only fish that have scales are kosher. Okay,
Yep, that's a thing that it
and
says.
it goes on by saying that all fish that have scales will have fins. Okay,
Okay.
now this is it's I think it I know again to you it's probably like who cares? I don't care. Where does this? But to say something like that in black and white, where if someone finds a fish today that has scales but no fins, can kind of crumble Judaism. Like it could literally just turn it to, oh look, your book was wrong. And till
Why would you
today,
like that's kind of obvious though, right? Like it's very unsurprising that all fish that have scales have fins. I think all fish have fins, right? Isn't that like a defining feature of fish?
well, not necessarily.
What
I mean,
well, then what is it
snakes
to be a fish if
sea
you don't have
snakes and so on,
fins? Like how would you swim if you're not if you don't have fins? Like even eels have fins.
you would still have a tail. What I'm saying,
Wait,
like
yeah, the tail has a fin on it.
like I'm saying, sharks, they have fins and no scales.
Well, yeah, but sharks are fish. So all fish have fins,
Right.
right?
I just thought it was a broad statement to put it down when they've never even went into the waters and they
Wait,
didn't see
you
the.
think that they had never been in the water before?
Well, back in the day, 4,000, I don't know how many years ago, to be able to have that kind of statement, I don't think they had those
Well,
scuba suits or
I
any
don't
kind
I
of
don't think that
submarine.
I don't think you need scuba suits to figure out that fish have fins, right?
Right.
That's
Anyways,
that's
I
not
thought it was
like
something.
that's not really that impressive. Like you go fishing, you pull out a fish, huh, this has fins. You go fishing again, you pull out a fish, huh, this has fins. Maybe they all have fins. Like it's just really unsurprising.
Well, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of fish that do not have fins.
I've never heard of any of them. I mean, I'm not a ichthyologist, so maybe some of them don't, but like I don't know, man.
Me neither. So for you, you think that there's no creator. There was just the kind of the Big Bang. Everything kind of came out from that. I'm assuming that you don't believe in any kind of life after death either, right?
I do not.
And so basically, do you feel like there was a reason for you to be alive?
Well, the reason I'm alive is because my parents, did the nasty about 9 months before I was born, right? That's the reason why
Right.
I'm alive.
And so therefore you have no purpose. You were just
Well, no,
created
I
just
mean,
to
I was created for a reason. The reason being that they wanted that, right?
they wanted children.
Yeah, although actually, my understanding is that I was actually uh,
A mistake?
not a mistake. I think I was a broken piece of contraception. They wanted another
Oh,
kid, but it was short, but it was too soon after my brother was born. So my brother's like 18 months older than me, 19 months older than
right.
me, and they wanted to wait a little bit longer.
Okay, so you weren't supposed to be here basically.
Yep. Or if I
That's
was, I should have been like 6 months younger or something like that.
okay, well. Anyways, so look, pleasure talking to you. I love a lot of your videos. I not through this account, but through another account I follow you. This
Oh,
is
okay.
a new site that I started. Jump on it.
Sure.
I'm making a shop. But okay, so thanks for having me up here.
Of course.
I hope that, I don't hope that you change your mind, but I hope maybe you see things and realize that it might have been just designed for us to look for it and find it, and there's a bit more of a reason to life than just living. I know it sounds
Look,
weird, but yeah.
if you're right, I hope I do find it.
Yeah, cool.
But thanks for being here, man.
With that, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom, bro.
Bye bye.
What a time to be alive. All right, let's bring up. Oh, actually, we have a guest from YouTube. Let's bring up the guest from YouTube. Piezo, can you hear me? Piezo? Oh. Piezo, can you hear me? Yeah, great. One sec. Do you have a video that you can turn on, or I can just give you the default background? Oh, well, your screen share will be too small. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Let me just get you up, and let me just get your link in, because they can't hear you right now, but we'll get you in just a minute. I just gotta copy your link. I don't have this optimized yet, so. All right, give me an audio test. Can you give me an audio test? Ah, great. Okay, I think we can hear you.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Great.
Cool.
All right, Piezo. What you got for me?
All right. So I think in this conversation, the most logical place to start is that if you assume, right, like, well, you don't really have to assume. If you just start with, we're here, right? We're here. Where
Mhm.
do we come from? That's the question everyone wants to know. What's our origin? If you assume that we go back to the beginning and you don't fall into an infinite regression paradox, then at the beginning, there was a beginning. At that point, if you observe and adhere to strict naturalism, then you have to believe that something came from nothing. And I believe that that's materially absurd, as did all the Greek philosophers and, pretty much everyone for thousands of years until the modern era.
Yeah, okay. I don't think that the universe began, so.
So you believe in an eternal universe?
At least I lean that way, yeah. Like, I'm not dogmatic about it. Like, I'm happy for the data to come out otherwise, but,
Don't all the data points that we use in cosmology all point to a time scale with an age
Well,
in
so
the
it points
accepted
to our
consensus paradigm?
it points to our universe entering its current phase a certain amount of time ago. So we know that the universe that we live in as we see it today didn't exist 13.8 billion years ago. It would have been very, very different. Very, very, like, essentially the rules governing our universe must have been very, very different at the time. So much so that we just don't understand how to describe it.
Okay, so you believe in an eternal material universe
That's the way I lean anyway.
Do you not think that that's unfalsifiable?
No, it's falsifiable.
How would you falsify an eternal universe?
So you would write down a model for it. That model would make predictions. If the predictions don't come true, that model is falsified.
But you having predictions for an eternal universe goes outside of, you know, the realm of science, because you would end up being at a point where, let's say, oh, I make a prediction and it was wrong, right? Which we've done that plenty of times. You would just alter your model and say, okay, here's a different prediction ad infinitum, or come to the point where you're like, as you said, we just don't know how to describe it, right? The origins before our current physical universe, we don't, before 13.8 billion years ago, we just don't know how to describe it, right? Like that's an appeal to ignorance, and there's nothing predictable about eternity.
So to be clear, like I can describe an example of one way that we would expect to see one thing that you would expect to see if the universe were eternal, and that would be primordial gravitational waves imprinted on like the gravitational wave background. Now we don't have the tools to probe that right now because gravitational waves are famously difficult to measure and detect. But this is not like some unfalsified. Like this is something that we could just test, right?
When you say primordial, can you give me your definition of that?
Yeah, so these would be gravitational waves that pre-existed what we now call what we call the Big Bang. So these would be and you can distinguish their features by basically their wavelength. And so we have certain expectations of what the gravitational waves from the Big Bang would have looked like. And if we see other gravitational waves that don't look like that are like longer in wavelength, for example, then that would be evidence that the universe pre-existed what we call the Big Bang.
Yeah. So isn't it an appeal to possibility that we'd be able to predict it at some point in the future, but we can't right now?
Well, so like I'm like I said, I'm not like dogmatic about the universe being eternal. There are some pieces of evidence that point me to lean in that direction, which is why I lean the way I do. So
So
yeah,
basically,
I mean, like,
it's equivalent to saying, we got. I'm just gonna say 14. I don't feel like saying 13.8 every
that's
time.
fine.
14 billion-year-old universe. Okay. But prior to that, it could have been any other kind of universe. It's completely unknowable prior to that.
It's not
All we'd be able
unknowable.
to.
I don't know why you would think it's
So
unknowable.
let me ask you this: your philosophical framework, when you
Mm-hmm.
talk about your physical framework of philosophy, right? Do you fall under realism? Because that's my philosophical view.
I'm some kind of physicalist.
Okay. So like I just want to be clear, realism being the view that um the world exists and it's
Yep.
independent of the mind, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Whereas
That's my view.
okay,
I mean
because like
that could also be put as like naturalism or material. Well, that would be I guess closer to. Well, I guess I usually think of what you just said as materialism rather than idealism. But if you want to call that realism, that's fine.
okay, well there's the counter to realism, or it's not the counter, but it's like a adjacent but not the same, called positivism. It's the theory that claims that whatever does exist can be verified through observation, experiment, and mathematical or logical evidence.
Yeah, I'm not
Okay.
a positivist.
Okay. So you'd be more of a realist.
Sure.
Okay. So do you hold to the idea and the concept that metaphysical things exist, or do you stick to a strict epistemological view?
I'm really agnostic about those, but let's say I'm very skeptical of any metaphysical objects having like any sort of like existence.
Okay. Do you accept things that are not scientifically verifiable or capable of mathematical proof?
Um, I can't come up with any examples of things that I would accept in that regard. Like
Okay.
I
So
guess
I
like
think
the existence of my own consciousness. I guess that probably can't be verified, but I have a personal experience of it, so I guess in some sense
yeah.
my own consciousness, I agree, it exists in some sense, whatever that might mean.
Okay. So I mean, it sounds like you're like you kind of have a mixed view between between both of them, right? Because for realism, you agree with realism in the frame that the world exists independent of the mind. It's not just what we can observe, like it exists independent of its observation.
Mhm.
But then you, at the same time, you say that you can't think of anything that you would accept that's not, able
No,
to
I
be
didn't. I didn't say I
verified
can't
or.
think of anything that I would accept. I just can't think of anything that I do accept. But that's just because like I don't believe in ghosts, right? I don't believe in God. So like, what else is like? And I don't think that abstract objects exist. So like, I don't know what else is there.
Well, like if you don't even think that you can prove whether your consciousness exists, or
Well,
like, then
I
how
think my
can you know?
consciousness exists, or rather, I think that consciousness exists. Whether I am some independent organism, thoughts certainly exist, at least in some physical sense, or some sense. Whether that's a physical sense or not, that's a different story. But I'm skeptical of the idea that there are like metaphysical objects that exist independently of like
Right.
physical things.
Yeah,
Very
so
skeptical
so
of
like
that.
when we say metaphysical, like the mind, right? Like ideas, conceptualizations, theism, right? Like all of these things are metaphysical or non-natural, and so they can't be proven scientifically.
Just so I can get a
So,
understanding of what you mean, would you say that software is metaphysical or physical, like Microsoft
um,
Word?
it depends on like what layer you're thinking of it, right? I mean, in terms of the actual software itself, it is information and it exists and it resides, on a physical medium. But so on in that sense, it's physical, but in terms of the conceptualization of the information itself, prior to being written on a medium, right? When it only exists within one's mind, or just even outside of one's mind, like that information could still technically exist, just not in your mind. Then that part is metaphysical, right?
Yeah, so I lean towards thinking that obviously Microsoft Word is physical.
Yeah.
Like it's just like obviously physical. And so in that sense, it seems entirely plausible to me that consciousness is very much the same. Consciousness being something like software and the brain being something like hardware.
Okay. So do you believe that you can not just think, not just believe, but know? Do you think that you can know things?
And when you say no, do you mean justified true belief or do you just mean something else?
I mean, like, know something to be true, as in, like, it's objectively true and it's independent of opinion or the mind itself.
Well, so I think that you can have justifications for believing that something is true. I don't know if I don't even know if it makes sense to talk about having like absolute certainty in anything because like I don't know, it just seems like it takes a lot of like arrogance to think that it's impossible that you're wrong about a certain thing. I mean, perhaps the idea that thoughts exist is the one thing that we can actually genuinely know with certainty because we're having like just the thought of thoughts is an example, right? Um, so perhaps that's the one thing that we can genuinely know. But perhaps beyond that, maybe not.
Because all of reality you interpret through your thoughts, and you know that your
Hmm.
thoughts exist, but then you say that everything else being through the lens of your thoughts, you don't know if you could actually know it objectively.
Well, yeah, like for example, like I think I'm talking to a person right now, but it could be that you're an advanced AI. So like I would be mistaken to claim 100% certainty about that, right?
Okay, I mean, like, that's just, I get what you're saying, but I could have this conversation with you in person and then you'd know,
Yeah, but
right?
then it could be that like I'm actually hallucinating on mushrooms that were given to me while I was asleep. Like again, you can be very certain of something without being 100% certain, right? 100. I just think
Okay.
that being 100% certain of basically anything is an exercise in arrogance.
So you're stepping out of realism now. So this is like this is actually good. Like I don't mind talking about this, but I just want to like give a clear claim about like what realism is and what it isn't. So I'm just going to read a little definition. So realism states that an objective world exists. It's
Hmm.
external to the mind. It's governed by causal regularities, and the senses, like the senses that we have as humans, our senses faithfully represent the world to the mind, and humans are able to uncover and accurately describe these regularities in the world. Now, there's
Yeah,
an
so I think
axiom,
that that's generally true, but I could be wrong about that, right? I could be wrong that that's actually how our universe works.
but that would, go against all of our senses, all of our
Yes,
experiences
it
as a
would, and
collective
and I
whole.
could be wrong, right? I don't think I am. I
So I
would
mean, you're
put I
appealing to a
would
possibility of like
look.
something that's
I'm not
virtually
appealing to the
zero.
possibility of anything. I'm just being epistemologically humble, right? I'm just not. I'm just saying that I don't trust myself to have absolute certainty in basically anything. You can have a high degree of certainty, but absolute certainty seems inaccessible.
But then you can't know anything at all if you're going to take that position. Like, what's the point of having a discussion? I mean, like, you don't
No,
actually
so
operate that way.
if knowledge is just a justified true belief, then all you need is a justification, and you just need it to be a belief. And if it happens to be true, then it's knowledge.
But then justified becomes subjective too, right?
Justification is just like a way of thinking about things, right?
Well, so here's an axiom, right, from realism.
Mhm.
It's a sufficient reason. It's called the sufficient reason axiom. It says nothing can give what it doesn't already have. A cause cannot potentially produce more in the effect than it already has. So,
I don't know what it means
proverbially
for
speaking,
a cause to have something.
like,
that seems like the kind of language that Thomists use.
well, okay, so like, if something's not impossible, then it's possible, right?
Yeah, that's a true dichotomy.
And then, like, our senses are reliable because there's nothing in the mind that did not enter the mind through the senses.
Okay, but can I give you an example of where they're not reliable and why I think that we should be at least epistemologically humble and not claim 100% certainty? Because, like, if you've ever taken psychedelics, your senses are no longer reliable, right? Like, they're just
your
not.
senses are still operating. I mean,
They're
okay,
operating,
sure.
but they're not reliable about what's going on in the outside world. Like, not at all, depending on your dose, of course.
Okay, I'm following so far.
So, like, it just doesn't make the fact that we know that if you do stuff to our brain, our senses are no longer reliable means that you can't 100% trust your senses all the time. It would be irresponsible to do so. Now, you can trust them most of the time. You can have like a high degree of trust in them, but to say like it is impossible that my senses could be wrong, that seems a little, I don't know, unjustified.
But invoking like the possibility for senses to be in error, like for example, the psychedelics, you're on them, right? You say that they're unreliable, but I mean they're reliable in reference to like their proper object, because your senses under psychedelics, like their proper object would not be that which under psychedelics you would say. I look at my phone on my desk, right? I perceive my phone. It's sitting here on my desk right now with my eyes. I look at it. Say I was taking psychedelics and I observed my phone to be green instead of black or
No,
whatever.
you observed it to be a
right?
unicorn instead of a phone.
Okay. But the proper object, right, that my senses are conveying to me is actually being filtered through my mind, so that the object itself is in my mind and not immediately physical. So
Your senses aren't separate from your mind. Your senses are in your mind.
they're connected. But see, what reason would you have to believe that everyone in the world is hallucinating? Because that's
I
still a
don't
giant appeal to
believe that.
possibility.
I don't believe that. I'm saying
Okay,
that
so then
I'm
it's
saying that I'm not going to claim absolute certainty on it.
so are you certain that God's not real?
No. I could be wrong.
Okay. Right. But if the senses are not reliable,
I didn't say that
right?
they're not reliable. I'm saying that we can't know with 100% certainty. Okay, if I said that a car has or if I said that like an engine has a 0.0000001% chance of exploding, would you say that that engine is not reliable?
No.
It's very reliable. It's just not 100% reliable.
Okay, but does that 0.00001% invalidate us being able to know things?
It depends. So I think that you can use your senses to justify beliefs that you have. And so if that's all you need to know, if that's all you need to define something as, being known, then sure, you can use your senses to know things.
Okay, but then we do know things. Okay, so we
The
can
question
use our
is
senses
whether
to know
the
things.
things that whether the things that we believe are true. And that's something that I don't know. I don't know if we can figure out truth with 100% certainty. I don't have a theory of truth that I work off of, so I'm a bit agnostic.
Okay, I got as much of an agreement as I needed for this part, so I think we can talk about it now. We've agreed that we can use our senses to know things. It was a
Sure.
long-winded way to get there, but okay,
Yeah.
okay. So established on that principle, we'll operate this conversation under the paradigm of philosophical realism. Then, now you just said you don't necessarily believe something. Now, belief just means to accept as true, right? And we
To
probably
be
agree on that.
convinced that it's the case, sure.
Okay. So when we look at the universe, or, people say 14 billion years, you say 14 billion years of the current form. Are we able to use our senses to peer into before physicality?
I don't know what you mean by before physicality. I think
Well,
that a physical
physicality
unit.
started 14.
No. I'm suggesting that a physical universe predates the Big Bang.
But it operated under completely different
No,
rules that we
just the
don't
Big
know.
Bang. Just the Big Bang period itself did. The universe prior may have been very much like our own, but we just can't access it because if you want to, like, it would be like trying to drive through a road that has a gap in the middle that your car can't drive through. Like, we just can't
But
we can't push our equations past because we don't know how to make our equations run past the Big Bang, because the Big Bang is the problem. That's where our physics breaks down.
yeah, so if you openly acknowledge that we can't know what it was like before that, but
I
it
didn't
could
say
have
that
been
we
like this,
can't know. It's not like it's not like in principle impossible, right? We just don't know
but
now.
why believe that it was there at all? Why believe that there was something before it?
Well,
What are you
there's
not
some
appealing to nothingness?
there's some at least like justification for this position, right? There's a it's humorously called the quantum eternity theorem, which is just a fairly straightforward statement that quantum mechanics allows for and indeed kind of requires an eternal universe as long as you meet two, or really one condition, namely that the universe has a non-zero amount of energy. There's also this idea that given recent data that came out last April, it looks like our universe is headed towards a recollapse rather than eternal expansion, which would at least suggest that that a cycle is possible. And then there's the philosophical reasoning that, like, an eternal universe has fewer has fewer theoretical assumptions than a finite universe does. So it's philosophically more satisfying.
But how can you have something? Because basically, right? You're saying this logical inference of it being eternal, right? You're saying that quantum mechanics could potentially explain it, but this is required, right? This logical inference, if you want to call it a logical, I wouldn't call it logical. I'd say it's philosophical, but this inference that you're making is required in order to create satisfactory coherence in a philosophical framework. Wouldn't you say that therefore you've developed a philosophical bias that necessitates it, right? Because that would be the reason that you're claiming that it is this way, rather than looking at there's this evidence that I've seen that shows me it
So
must be eternal.
maybe I can just give you some context. If you had asked me last March, I would have said that the universe started 13.8 billion years ago and there wasn't anything before. I changed position in April because this data came out.
Data about something that was
About
before.
about the universe likely about the universe likely recollapsing in the future.
Okay, but what does something it does in the future have anything to do with what happened in the past?
Well, it enables cyclic behavior, right?
Isn't that presumptive?
I mean, it becomes at least possible. In the case of, if the universe were going to expand forever, then barring some more more exotic physics, it just does that, which then gives you fairly good reason to think that it wasn't that it's not in some sort of cyclic thing. But if it actually does expand and then recollapse back to the exact same state it started in, generally, if something ends in the same state it starts, then that means it's in the state where it would start again. That's like just a general behavior of physical systems. If you can wind up back where you started, then the whole thing repeats. It's only if the system doesn't close that it doesn't repeat.
So the appeal to possibility, right? When you do that, it means basically you're choosing not to believe in or accept or do what's probably or likely true, but what you want to be true or want to be possible. So that it is implicitly a
I literally
philosophical
changed my
bias.
view like 9 months ago because
Yeah,
data came out.
yeah, but your view is based on, what I haven't looked at the data, so we'll just presume that, we'll follow it, what you just said. I'll just assume that what you just said is accurate, right? I don't need it to be wrong. It's fine. Well, it looks like, at some point in the future that the universe is going to end up collapsing. But you then attaching this, well, that must mean that it's done this before and it's always doing this, that's
It makes that
inherently
possible.
presumptive.
It makes
Yeah,
that
it makes it
possible.
possible,
We cannot rule that out.
right, and that's what I'm saying. This is therefore definitionally an appeal to possibility, because
Sure, that doesn't
you
make
see
it
that.
false.
No, it doesn't necessarily make it false. It is a logical fallacy, though, right?
Well,
Because
it's an informal logical fallacy, by the way.
sure, but your view of a lack of a creator hasn't changed, has it?
No, I don't think that you need a creator even if the universe had a beginning. But that's beside the point.
So if we had this conversation 9 months ago and you were agreeing that it had a beginning 14 billion years ago,
I guess it was like
you
11
still
months
would,
ago or 10 months ago. Anyway, yeah. Yeah, I still wouldn't
and your
believe in it.
viewpoint could change again, right? Like you would
Yeah,
say
yeah.
that
More data's coming out in March. Like they're going to release their next batch of data in like next month. And if the data comes back, because it was new data, so they're going to release another batch of data. And if it turns out that it was a statistical fluke, that it was actually an error, then yeah, I'll change my view again.
I feel like I don't know. I can't say what the conversation would have been 11 months ago, and unless maybe you could tell me, but I think we could agree that the necessary logical antecedent to something being created is therefore a creator. So philosophically, that would lead one who's a naturalist to choose that the world was not created, or in other words, always there.
No,
Because if
you
we
can
say it had a beginning,
why is it okay to have an eternal creator but not an eternal, say, set of laws that cause the thing to exist?
well, I wouldn't say that the laws cause the universe to exist.
No, but
My
like
position would be that
that's what
God made it.
that's what some mathematical realists think, right? There's like this whole
Yeah,
mathematical
but
universe thing.
I don't think it's tenable to say that laws created a universe, because then it's an infinite regression once again, and then you'd have
It's
to
not an
ask,
infinite
where the
regression.
laws come from.
Those things could just be metaphysical objects that exist atemporally, right?
But where'd they come from? Like
They could just be necessary, right?
But you can't necessary based on what? And what's the origin?
Necessary things justify themselves, right?
That's a philosophical position that I believe.
Okay, so what's the origin of God under your worldview?
He's the only uncaused cause.
So that's just
right.
So just special pleading, or is there some justification for thinking that such a thing is possible?
Well, it would only be special pleading if I believed that he existed within the framework of the universe that he made, right? Because we're applying the laws of like logic regarding physical systems to God when we do that. But if he doesn't fall under that, then it's not special pleading. It's just the way he is.
Why couldn't the same be said about the laws of the universe? Why couldn't those be things that are the only uncaused causes?
Because in a strict naturalistic sense, right? I mean, you're basically deifying information.
I mean, mathematical realism, which, by the way, it's not a position I take. It's just a position that one could take and still be an atheist. Or mathematical Platonism, for example, doesn't deify anything. And if you're of the opinion that the universe is mathematical, then this is a natural position that you would take. And this is not like an uncommon position, by the way. Like Max Tegmark takes this position, and yeah, well, he's the one who popularized it anyway.
So, do you think? First of all, let me. This is going to be a little two part, but it's really short. Okay. Do you have any data points that would prove that God is not a myth?
Do I have any data points that would prove God is not a myth? Like, could I come up
Yeah.
with examples of things that
Yeah,
would
would there be
provide
any
evidence?
data points that would prove that a
Yeah, sure.
creator for a
If
universe is
if
not a myth?
if Jesus like showed up in my living room,
I
I
didn't
would
say
probably
Jesus. I
well,
said
no,
a
no.
creator.
I'm giving you an example. If Jesus showed up in my living room and then he did miracles, then I'd probably believe in a God too.
Hmm. But I asked, do you have any data that would prove that a creator is not a myth?
That would be an example of data that would prove that a creator is not a myth.
Okay, I'm asking.
Or are you asking
Okay,
for data that
okay, got
currently
it.
exists?
Well, okay, I got it. I got it. So that would, so if you saw with your senses something, you know,
Very compelling.
that,
Yep.
yeah, okay. So how would you know that you're not hallucinating?
Well, I wouldn't know, but I would go get my wife and I would make sure that like I would, I would rub my eyes, I would get out my phone, record it, I would go get my wife, make sure that she can see it too, make sure that that I'm not going crazy. And then I'd be like, "Oh, okay, well, it seems like my senses are working as they usually do. So this must be real."
Right, I got you. I got you. Got you. So now here's the second part.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, does an infinitely powerful creator, okay? Now, infinity is only broken in our physical system, right? If it's like the under the laws that we, presume upon the physical universe. If the creator's outside of it, then you don't have to say infinity's, illogical or whatever. Does an infinitely powerful creator necessitate a more infinitely powerful creator, or can he stand on his own?
I don't see what power has to do with whether a thing is necessary or contingent, right?
If omnipotent, all that.
Like, let me give you an example. If you have an all-powerful creator, that creator could create another all-powerful being, right?
He could, but does he necessarily have to make one or come
No,
from one?
what I'm saying is that
Okay.
the reason I'm giving that example is because what that means is that you can have something that's all-powerful that was created by something else. Like
Okay.
there's nothing, there's no like contradiction there, right?
Hmm.
So it at least doesn't like, you can't just say, he's all powerful, he doesn't need a creator. Like, that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah. So basically, my point here is that if you want to, look at it through like the lens, like my eyes, right? Because
Mhm.
I've been like looking at your view, and we're kind of examining each other's views.
Yep.
I don't require infinite regression. I don't require appeal to possibility. Now, you might think I do. I don't know if you would contend that claim, but I can explain why I don't. I don't require appeal to possibility. And I believe that using my senses, right, which I appeal to realism and trust them as being reliable, generally speaking, to look at the world around me and look at the natural laws that are in the world, when I collate all these things together, it becomes logical to presume that the world came from a creator. If I want to take the alternative position or the opposite position, right, and say that there's not a creator, then basically I have to, invoke a either an appeal to possibility directly or a homunculus fallacy, also known as infinite regression, right? Like, there's some
Again, it's an
there's some
informal fallacy. It's not like actually logically ruled out or anything. There's no paradox there.
right. But the point I'm getting to here, right? The point I'm getting to here is if you are able to make both claims, there is a creator and there's not, but the position of there is a creator doesn't require those informal fallacies or those presumptions, and there's not a creator position does require them. It leans to the latter, the not a creator position, having a philosophical bias as being the primary reason for that belief rather than just a strictly logical or
Oh no,
empirical one.
the position comes from Occam's razor, right? You have to
How
assume an
so?
infinitely complex being. I don't have to assume that. Your whatever position you hold, it will always be more theoretically or less theoretically parsimonious than mine, because I don't have to appeal to infinite complexity of anything. You do.
You don't have to appeal to infinite, but you're appealing to infinitely existing universe and eternal
Yeah, but
time.
that's described in with a finite amount of data, right? Doesn't require an infinite amount of data to specify. In fact, it's specifiable. I would imagine that you don't think that the creator can even be fully described.
No, but then the reason he can't be fully described is I exist in a material universe that is finite. He does
Right.
not.
So
Therefore,
so
the
so
material universe does not contain enough space, time, etc., in order
right.
to describe
Your
him.
your your worldview is like the least theoretically parsimonious worldview that's ever existed. It requires an infinite amount of data sources or an infinite amount of data points to describe it. Mine requires like a few
But it's not.
equations, a few like a few ontologies. Like it doesn't require that much.
No, we agree upon the equations that describe the physical world,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
it's
But the thing is
presumptive
you
that
you believe in all of that, and then something that's infinitely complex on top of it, right?
because something doesn't come from nothing.
That sounds like a
And
philosophical bias you have.
well, no, you can't get something from nothing. That's a
Where did
logical truth.
sorry, where did God's desire to create the universe come from?
I'm not certain. I don't know. I don't need to know.
Okay. But you think it had a cause, right?
If I had to guess, I would say that he wanted to, and his
Oh, why did he
desire,
want
his
to?
want, right, based upon something within himself, right?
But it must have
You
had a
in your
cause, right?
worldview, yeah, but you're in your worldview, you have to believe in absurd degrees of what you would call like quote unquote cosmic coincidences, and then you
No, I
have to
don't.
take these big
What cosmic
logical
coincidences do I
leaps.
have to believe in?
Pretty much everything pertaining to the existence of our universe, a
Like
big
what?
bang, physical laws, all
Where's
that
the
stuff.
coincidences?
Uh, the fact that we're here, you'd say that there's trillions of worlds, but we just
Mm-hmm.
happen to be the one. So even though it's
So
tiny
where's the
percent chance,
coincidence?
we're just we are the coincidence, right?
Well, it's not a coincidence. Like it's not a coincidence when somebody wins the lottery when 100 million people play the lottery.
Evolution's a coincidence. The Big Bang is a coincidence.
Okay, so I
And
thought that you were
non
coming here in good faith, but the fact that you think evolution is a coincidence makes me think that you didn't come here in good faith.
well
Because this is
non
that's like bottom tier creationist arguments.
non random, non chaotic laws of physics being born into a universe naturally is statistically
Who said that they were born into
virtually
the
zero.
universe? Who said that they were
Well,
born
put
into the
into the
universe?
universe, existent, whatever. The
The
laws of physics that we have are
mm-hmm.
coherent and consistent and not
Yep,
chaotic, right?
I
If
agree.
it was random, wouldn't you expect
Who
it to
said
be
it was
chaotic?
random?
Well, if it's not
It's
random,
not my
what's the
belief
alternative?
that it had to be that
Okay, you
way.
have random and you have purpose.
That it had no.
Purposeful.
Okay, so is it purposeful that the ratio of the circumference to its diameter of a circle is pi?
Yes.
Is that that's purposeful? You think that you think that God could have chosen to
Yes.
make that a different number?
Yes.
Really? How could God
Yes.
have made this the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter different? How could he have done that?
He could have made the world in such a way in which the mathematical laws apply differently and the ratios are different.
Are you telling me that logic can that God could just make logic not true?
God could have made logic different than it is now.
Could God make himself not exist while also existing?
Could God make himself under the logic that we live in? No.
No, I mean, can he do it? I don't care about under the logic that we live in. I'm asking, can he do it?
Logically, no.
Oh, so he is bound by the laws of logic. So he couldn't have changed the circumference of a circle to its diameter.
Well, I didn't say he's bound by those laws. I'm using those laws to evaluate your question. He exists outside of those laws,
Well, I'm
though,
asking.
which is
Do
why
you
he's
think
able
he
to.
could
He
do
could have
it?
made them
I'm not
different.
asking. I'm not asking if you think that, like, according to our logic, if he could do it. I'm asking if he could do it. Period.
But when I'm answer using logic, right? I'm not answering using
Okay.
non-logic. Otherwise, what's the point of the conversation?
Well, look. So either you think that God can change the laws of logic, in which case he could just throw away the law of identity, and he could throw away the law of non-contradiction, and he could just
Or I
be
think
like,
he can
yeah, I
change
don't
anything.
exist, and I exist at the same time. Could he lift a rock so heavy that he couldn't lift it?
Yeah,
Sorry, could he make a rock so heavy that he couldn't lift it?
Yeah, to be clear, you can theoretically come up with an infinite number of like logical impossibilities, and then
Mm-hmm.
ask if God could do X, Y, or
Yeah,
Z. That's
that's
a
what I'm
logical
asking.
impossibility. Right. I know. But just to make it clear,
Mm-hmm.
I believe that God could do anything in the extreme sense. In other words, that he is not limited even by our conceptions of what logical things are. He could have made a world in such a way that we would be having this conversation under a completely different mindset, using completely different laws of logic, completely different laws of physics, all that. It could be completely different, right? Like even the thoughts that we're thinking, the rationalizations we're making right now, operate under the laws of logic in the world we live in now. It
Yep.
does not stand to reason he couldn't have made it different and we'd think differently.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's another reason why I don't believe in the God that you believe in, because your God is definitionally illogical.
No, he's not.
You just said that he could change the logic. He doesn't have to obey the logic, hence illogical.
He could have made a world in which logic was different.
And it doesn't apply to him, so he's illogical. He could both exist and not exist at the same time, under your worldview.
What is existence, right? Like, that's
You tell
getting
me.
to the point of the that's getting to the point of the question. You're using a word that we believe in, right? Like, I'll say believe in, but we use definitionally to mean this thing. And what it means is within this physical world. When we say something exists, it is, right? But existence itself is something that was put into place by him. As I
Well,
said
that's
earlier,
not
he's
true,
the
because
only.
he is, isn't he? Under your
Yeah,
worldview?
but that's what I
So
said
then,
earlier.
he
I
has
was going there.
existence. This is not
He's
an
the
assumption.
only. Yeah, he's the only self-existent being.
Oh, that's a big claim. Why should I believe that?
You don't have to believe that, but I think that it is logically necessary that if the world did not come from nothing, I'll give you the step by step. Here's how it goes. If you believe the world didn't come from
By the
nothing,
way, I'm going to step away and grab my water bottle, but I can still hear you, so go ahead.
all right. If you believe that the world didn't come from nothing, and because like me, I believe that from nothing comes nothing. So if you believe that the world didn't come from nothing, it means that the logical antecedent would be a creator. So then it becomes logical that this creator would be all powerful.
Sorry.
And if he's all
that
powerful,
logical
then
antecedent doesn't follow. Like, what's the inference rule?
if the world didn't come from nothing, then
it came from
must have
something.
been
That doesn't mean a creator.
Yeah. Well, the something would have put it into place, would therefore be creating it.
Well, yeah, but would you say that when, like...
Okay.
Would you say that a tree is a creator when it falls on the ground and causes a sound?
It created the sound. I mean,
so would you call it the creator? Would you call it a creator? Because that's
not
just a
in
weird,
the sense
weird
we're
use of
discussing.
The word. Because it seems like you're doing like a equivocation on like the word creator then.
Well, no, I think what you're saying now is being pedantic, because in the context of what I said, if the world did not come from nothing, therefore it came from something. So the something it came from that put it into place would be the creator.
Yeah. Now that doesn't imply that that creator has a mind, has free will, has any power at all. It doesn't imply any of that.
Well, he would have to have a mind.
Why are you calling it a he? You don't know any properties of it.
That's how I refer to God. So,
but we're not talking about God. We're just talking about the cause of the universe.
Okay. The creator, but once again, I'm not trying not to be pedantic. For the flow of purpose of a conversation, we don't need to correct every moniker for a term. The creator, right? Therefore, since we're using that term for the something that made the world, would actually have to have a mind and would actually have to have power, because without power, then the world would not have been able to been brought into existence. And without a mind, right, there would not be able to be the information in the world that exists. So those things are logically necessary.
What's the inference rule? Like, what's the how are you? Because I don't. Those just sound like assertions. Like, I don't know why I should believe it. Why I should think any of that's true.
What do you mean by what is the inference? What is the inference?
Like is it modus ponens, modus tollens? These are like your standard logical arguments. Like, if A then B, A therefore B.
Oh, if
that would be
the
modus
world,
ponens.
Right? If from nothing comes nothing, and we have something, therefore something.
Yeah. Okay. So that would be modus tollens. Sure. If the world if the world didn't come from nothing and the world exists, then sure, it came from something. I agree. But I'm asking, what's the inference rule for how you then figure that that cause, whatever it might
Okay.
be, has a mind,
I'm
it has power, etc. Like how
I'm
do you
glad
justify
that you
that?
agree so far. So
Well, I
we're
agree that
agreeing that
if
it
the
came from
universe had a beginning, then we can just accept that axiom that it had some sort of cause. Sure.
Okay, so real quick, we can continue this. I just want to know because I'm leading into this. The way I led into this was asking if we had this conversation 11 months ago, right? Because you said 11 months ago you believed it did have a beginning. So 11 months ago, when you believed it had a beginning, what was your something?
So
The creator.
I thought it had a beginning, but in a kind of complicated way. It's hard to explain, and I made a video about this a while ago. But there's something called there's a notion in which time and space are kind of interchangeable, and so there's this idea. It's called the Hartle-Hawking state, which is a thing proposed in the 80s. Anyway, the point is that there was like a non-temporal beginning that evolved into temporality, but there was no time before it. But it was so in some sense it was eternal, in the sense that there was no time, but it was still there was still evolution. It's complicated, and but this is to say that there was a timeless phase of the universe where it just existed. There was quantum states and stuff like that, like quantum system, and that timeless phase, in a timeless, complex way, evolved to produce time.
Okay.
It's the mathematics are really complicated behind this. For anybody who's watching, go watch my video on the Hartle-Hawking state. It's very interesting. But the point is that that was my position before.
Okay, so all right, I'm gonna say this, and I'm saying this in very good faith, so it might sound a little rough. I'm not directing it towards you before I say it.
Sure.
I just don't want you to take it personally.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries, man. I think this is my belief that if you have to appeal to some version of reality that's never been observed, there's no reason to assume it ever was, other than it being logically necessary to take the alternative position, then that is definitionally a philosophical bias because you're not being led to it by
Oh, but
any
that's not what
type
I'm
of.
doing.
Well, I'm saying the believing in a a timeless period that before time existed, but still had all these things happening and taking place, and
Yeah, that's just
being
what
all very
happens if you take
complicated.
quantum mechanics seriously, right?
That
Like,
you
if
end
the
up at a
universe,
point where there's no time.
yes,
So how do you even
this
describe
was revolution.
existence
This
with
was a
no time?
revolutionary idea from Hawking in like the 80s. I want to say maybe it was the early 90s. No, I think it was the mid 80s. But this is just what happens if you take quantum mechanics seriously, in particular how it applies to gravity.
And you think that makes more sense than just being like God made the world?
That's an appeal to simplicity.
Yours is an appeal to possibility that's unsubstantiated, though.
No, mine is based off of physical principles, right?
Why presume the physical principles that operate within time have anything to do with the theoretical period in which there was no time?
So those physical principles describing the entire. So there's a whole story here. The way that Hawking got to this was by examining something called the. I think he was actually looking at the Wheeler-DeWitt equation. The Wheeler-DeWitt equation describes the universe in a timeless way, and one of the ways that it does this is that it says, well, you have kind of like the whole universe, but the universe has a property of time when it's behaving classically. But you can ask what happens using this equation. What does the universe do when its energy, when its when its density and so on are sufficiently high that it doesn't behave classically anymore, when quantum mechanics takes over? Well, when that happens, if you run the math, you get that time becomes complex, and in that sense, it becomes spatial. So you have kind of like a timeless beginning.
Didn't Stephen Hawking admit that his scientific framework for which he viewed like the world and the origin of the world, he believed it upon grounds of modesty because of a lack of evidence and didn't want to be presumptive?
I don't care why Stephen Hawking believed what he believed. I'm just telling you that
Okay,
he was
but
the
isn't
person
that
who came up
pertinent?
with it. No,
Well,
it's
because
only
the point
pertinent
I'm trying
if
to
you're
make.
relying on authority here. I'm not relying on authority.
Well, well, yeah, but my point this whole time, right? Because like the topic of your stream is, convince me that, that there's a God, God's a myth. I'm an atheist, right?
Mhm.
And so the whole point I've been trying to make is that position that you're taking, right, is one born out of a philosophical preference or bias. It's not strictly logical or empirical. And it's okay to disagree about what we believe in, but the point I'm trying to make to show you is that you're not doing it
Logical or
strictly out of
empirical? It is
empiricism or logic.
it is empirical, right? So we all agree that quantum mechanics is, at least I hope you agree, that quantum mechanics is the governing behavior, or it's the kind of the governing set of rules that describes our universe. At least that seems to be true. That's what all of the data that has ever been done, ever been tested, suggests. So to then say, well, if that's true, why don't we just apply it to the whole universe and then see what happens? Totally reasonable, totally empirically driven.
There's plenty of parts of, the consensus framework that change every so many years, even that now currently are known to not be fully accurate, but they're the best working model that we have, right? If you make a positive claim that God doesn't exist, there's not an empirical evidence for it, right? If you make a positive claim that there was an eternal universe, that it was existing within time 14 billion years ago, then prior to 14 billion years ago, there was a timeless period with no time, which is, not quantifiable within time.
It's
That is also
quantifiable,
a
it's just
positive
complex
claim.
time.
But there's also not any empirical evidence for that
The
claim. It
empirical
is
evidence is quantum mechanics, the accuracy of quantum mechanics, right? That's the empirical evidence. It's a deductive inference from the empirical data that supports quantum mechanics.
is in every measurement that we take within time. So then how, therefore,
Actually, sort of
did we
no.
take
There was an experiment a few years ago where they demonstrated that you can have like a timeless state, which is interesting.
So you're saying that they performed an experiment within time to prove that there's timelessness?
Yeah, basically. You should read the paper. It's cool.
Yeah, sure. You could drop a link maybe in like your stream.
I made a video about it a while ago, but I'll see if I can find the paper again.
But that seems to me logically absurd.
That's how quantum
right?
mechanics feels a lot, doesn't it?
We exist in a state. Because it'll take forever if we get into that. But let me do this. Let me do this, right? So here's where I would, if we're going to talk about at least a little bit of science.
It was 12 years ago that it came out.
I would like to go this way, because I'm here, like, chat to me or whatever.
Yeah, I can.
All right, I'll copy it real quick as soon as you drop it.
It was published somewhere. I just found the preprint. I think it was published in PRA.
Anyways, like, quantum mechanics at best,
I'm not
right?
claiming it's falsifying anything.
Quantum mechanics.
That's not how you. It's evidence in favor of.
No, I know, but I didn't say you did. Well, that's what I'm trying. Okay, so at best, it would provide a possibility.
No, it provides evidence of an alternative, right?
And whether it actually does provide, well, whether it can be contentious, and that's why I'm saying at best, right?
It's not that at best, it's not that it provides a possibility. It's that it provides evidence for the alternative. Right, like you make a prediction, you have a prediction, and then you test that prediction, and if it comes true, that's evidence. And in this particular case, we have evidence that quantum mechanics and quantum mechanics can be logically deduced. You can make a logical deduction from what we know about quantum mechanics, and we have evidence that quantum mechanics is true, that you get some sort of inference. You can infer something about the world based off of what we know about quantum mechanics. That's how we do science.
It's a really big logical leap.
It's smaller than believing in an infinitely complex being that we can't touch, taste, hear, see, smell, and that we have no access to, right?
No, I think that taking a set of empirical measurements in a lab and saying, okay, we can break down the, constants of, physics that before 14 billion years ago, there was a nondescript, timeless period of questionable eternity, right? Like, that is a massive, massive, more logically consistent than just saying, oh, something
Can I give
came
you an
from
example of?
something.
Can I?
Like, I think that's much simpler.
Prior to about the 1950s, maybe 1940s. Well, between around say the 1800s, or let's say between the let's say between the early 1900s and the 1940s or 50s, most physicists thought that the universe always existed. Right? Like the steady state model was the go-to model of cosmology, that the universe was eternal and static. Right? That was the position. And then, based off of some very complicated theory that we call general relativity from Einstein, and based off of a single observation that there's like microwave, like radio wave static coming from space, they inferred that the universe had a beginning. At the time, they thought it was like 20 billion years ago or something like that. Like,
based on the expansion theory.
Yes, but that was inferred from one piece of data and one very complicated theory. And yet that's just how science works. You draw inferences from the data that you have, and from the models that you tested. That's how we do science.
Will we ever be able to observe, measure, test, repeat anything occurring
Well, it depends on,
before time?
If there was a before, then sure, that's at least theoretically possible. You're asking me to predict the future. I can't predict the future.
No, I think that the point I'm trying to make is this is outside of the bounds of empiricity.
It doesn't have. There's no reason why it has to be outside the realms of empiricism. Like, these are questions that could, in principle, have scientific answers. Like, there's no reason to exclude that.
Okay. I think my sound
I don't know why
this
happens kind of frequently.
I don't with absolute, let's not even say absolute, because we had a little bit of a contention earlier, but let's just say, within any standard, the past, like 14 billion years ago.
Can we know anything about the past?
I'm talking about empirically with certainty, 14 plus billion years ago or before time.
I mean, depends on what data we have access to.
Well, any data that we have is only going to be based on things that came to us within time, right? Even propagation and collection of information.
I no longer accept the Hartle-Hawking model. So like if you were asking me 11 months ago, I probably would have given you some answer, but like I think that there was time before the Big Bang, so.
Okay. So once again, I know that 14 billion years ago is where the timeless period started, right? But still eternity in your current model.
That's not my view.
Not timeless. Sorry, not timeless. A different conception of the universe in which everything operated differently according to different laws and constants.
No,
right?
It was almost. Under my view, it was almost certainly very similar to our universe now before the Big Bang. It's just at the Big Bang is where we just don't have the physics to describe it, so we can't like push our math past it.
Yeah, let's get before. Okay, I want to talk a little bit of science. But before we do that, I just want to point out this last thing. I would say, and you agree because you didn't say that you were claiming this, but I just want to make the statement clear. There's zero empirical evidence against the existence of a creator. So I would say that makes atheism untenable. So to be logically consistent,
is there any empirical evidence against the existence of unicorns?
Well, hold on. I would say that the only tenable position for you is agnosticism.
The
right? Because
evidence,
you
the
claim to be
evidence
an atheist,
against,
right?
the evidence against a god is the evidence for things that preclude the existence of a god.
But these things are logical leaps, inferences, and appeals to possibility. When we
Inferences
talk
and
about the beginning,
what you call a logical leap is just an inference of somebody who's more sophisticated. Like, calling it a logical leap is just a way of degrading the position when it's totally logically justified, right? You're just calling it a logical leap
we,
because it just sounds far-fetched to you. That doesn't make it
I
actually
think we'll
far-fetched.
have to agree to disagree on that point,
Okay.
which is fine. Science though. So I don't know if you remember. You probably do, but I'll jog your memory. Excuse me. A couple weeks ago, um, I listened to a discussion, maybe like a week and a half, I don't know, something like that. I listened to a discussion that you had
Mm-hmm.
with Alan from Space Audits. You're familiar with him?
Yep. Wait, hold on. Before we
Okay.
go any further, are you a flat earther?
Yes, but I don't
Okay.
think that that's necessary
Okay.
necessarily.
It just informs my view of this conversation. But you're fine. Go ahead.
No, it's cool. It's cool. I mean, I think that that's a little bit of poisoning the well, but it's fair. I mean, you're allowed and it's entitled to that opinion. It's okay. Um, but I think I like to discuss geocentrism more, at least initially, because I think it is more materially relevant to the philosophical implications of these types of conversations.
Sure.
Right. I even think that like I could agree to disagree with somebody on the geographical topological issue, but the overall cosmological framework being geocentrism is more important.
Okay. I
And
mean, like
and so that's
that's
kind of
driven
like
by a religious belief for you, though, right?
which part?
The geocentrism thing.
No, actually, that's
Then how did you
I,
arrive at that conclusion?
sure. So I think that empirically speaking, and this is where I was actually going anyway. Empirically speaking, it's we can use both the classical and um, modern relativistic frameworks to establish a kinematic equivalence for a geocentric and heliocentric position. So you
Tell
can't
me
really
what you
make a
hold
truth
on. Tell
claim.
me what you think a kinematic equivalence is.
Just analyzing motion without the inclusion of forces into the system.
Yeah. So what is true is that you have implicit forces if you assume the Earth is stationary. Like forces must be pseudo forces must be imposed, right?
That's fine,
I.e.,
but
Newton's laws don't hold if you assume the Earth is stationary.
no.
So it's not a
We,
kinematic
we
equivalence.
no. You got Hawking, Hubble, all your people of today. If you listen to any of their lectures or read any of their works, right?
Both of those people are dead. You brought up bad examples.
Okay, sure. The modern consensus framework within physics does not deny the kinematic equivalence. The place where the non-equivalence would come in at any point would only potentially be dynamics. If you operate under Mach's principle, even dynamics would become equivalent because of a rotating universe about the axis of
So
rotation,
you're
placing Earth
confusing
in that
kinematics
center.
and dynamics. I mean,
No, I'm
so
not.
so you are Mach's principle doesn't do away with dynamics.
I'm talking about it in reference to dynamics. That's what I'm saying. When you bring in Mach's principle and discussing the dynamics, if you put Earth in the center of the axis of rotation of the entire universe, it would be the only point that wouldn't have to move. All the centrifugal and centripetal forces converging, Coriolis forces converging upon it would allow it to stay fixed where it's at. It would allow the universe to stay in a perpetual rotation. The only thing that would be required, would be a prime mover to set it into motion. Once it was set into motion, it
Well,
would
and you
continue
need general
perpetually.
relativity, right? Otherwise, it doesn't work.
No,
No,
I
no. So
disagree. But
Mach's principle, the lens throwing effect, how you can get the centrifugal forces and stuff from the the celestial bodies, from the galaxies and all of those things imparting their motion on the Earth, that comes from general relativity. You can't get it any other way.
well, you're treating space time as some type of essentially, not maybe literally, they would be contentious to say that, but essentially a material fabric through which to propagate, forces and things such as that. So
No, I'm not.
yeah, it's
I'm just saying that the model is an accurate prediction of if you reject that model, then you need some other mechanism, some other set of equations to describe why it is that the motion of a galaxy very, very far away affects what's happening here.
Sure, but okay. The point that I was trying to get to, right? I was asking you about your conversation with Alan. You had a conversation with him about a week and a half ago.
Yep.
I have, just so we don't have to, like, I have an exact timestamp I can share with you. If you just, it's like a 1 minute and it's like a 1 minute and 20-second clip, roughly.
So I can't play YouTube videos because I'm multi-streaming to TikTok, and I'll get banned.
Okay. Well, I'll just say it to you then, and you can fact check me. I'll give you the link to Alan's video, right? Because he streamed it too. So I just sent that to you. But it's on Space Audits.
Sure.
It's on Space Audits YouTube. The title is Special Relativity Discussion with Blitz PhD. The timestamp is 1749.
Okay.
But anyways, in this conversation, he's pointing out you guys were talking about the Sagnac effect.
Yep.
And absolute rotation and and he's talking about Sagnac with you about it producing interference patterns on the table, and you go through that for a little while, and then he asked you then, like, well, lift, and the answer that you gave to him, I'm being robotic again.
You sound fine to me.
Okay.
Yeah, so unfortunately, that's like a YouTube issue because people on TikTok can hear you just fine, and the recording will be fine. It's just the live YouTube. I think it's just because my like my renderer is just not very good. Like, I don't have a very good computer.
Okay. Well.
Yeah, no, it always does. It's just the live issue.
Okay. So, what you told him when he asked you, how does Michelson-Morley not predict or not, demonstrate a fringe shift? I noticed it at first. I was like incredulous that you actually said this because you got the right answer, but you didn't realize you took our position. You said that it didn't produce a fringe shift because the moving with respect to the lab frame.
Yeah, and it wasn't. It's not. That's not that's totally consistent with relativity.
Okay, so I don't know if you realize this, but saying that the reason it didn't produce, implicitly saying that the only way it would produce a fringe shift is if it moved relative to the lab, which makes the lab a preferred frame.
Well, look,
for
so
light measurements.
You can have
You're
preferred.
Not allowed to
you
have
absolutely.
So
you absolutely can have preferred frames. By the way, as like for example, if your if the source and the detector are not in the same place, like if your source is moving, if it emits light and then it moves before it's detected, then then you'll detect it. You'll detect the difference because it's like the whole system has changed, right? Like, of course, the light system doesn't close.
But didn't Michelson-Morley's interface first moving through space? Then it did move, but it didn't.
No, it was. I mean, it was in an essentially inertial frame.
One way or the other.
The question is whether the light. The question is whether the light actually finishes a circuit, right? And there's a frame. There's a frame in which the light circuit closes up. Wendigo, thank you for the 200 crowns. Like, if there's a frame where the light circuit closes up, then that's true in every frame. If there's not a frame where the light circuit closes up, then that's not true in any frame. But just to be clear, like, the whole business about inertial frames, like, I wouldn't go around citing Alan's discussion about inertial frames because he doesn't know what an inertial frame is. I've been talking with him about this in my Discord server for weeks now, and he doesn't know what an inertial frame is. He doesn't know what a coordinate system is. He doesn't know what a Galilean transformation is.
Hold on, we don't need to argue about what some guy does or doesn't know. I'm talking. So you
that's
said
consistent with
that
relativity.
The reason wait a second. You said the reason it didn't make a fringe shift is because it didn't move with respect to the lab. The whole point of the experiment, right?
Yeah.
And so, as you said, when the interferometer moves, the light will end up hitting the detector at a different place than it started. That would be true if it was moving through space.
The path that the light was taking moves too, right? So there's no issue. It closes
The
up.
path.
Yeah, of course the path moves.
Hold on.
The path isn't the
Wait
path
a
isn't
second.
stationary, and then the detector's moving, right?
When you say that, are you talking about the instrument, or are you talking about the region in space?
I'm talking
through
about
which
I'm saying that the light
travels
travels through space with the instrument, right?
But are you saying space?
No.
Okay, good. Okay. So if it doesn't, then the only thing that would be moving with the light would be the device, therefore the mirrors. I would be traveling just through space, right? Through space is not attached to anything.
Yeah,
It's just
but in
traveling
different
through
frames,
space.
it will take different paths.
So
right?
So we could,
or it will appear to take different paths anyway.
okay, but on the moving in one direction, right? And so the light that goes along the axis of the device will have a different travel / return time along that interference pattern.
Why would it do that?
Why
would it have a different pattern?
It's the same thing that
No, in the Sagnac
happens
effect,
in
you
the
have
Sagnac effect.
fiber optics, for example, and then you have the detectors moving relative to the fiber optics. Or in the that's for the transverse Sagnac effect.
No.
The point is that you have a source that is moving relative to the detector, right? It absolutely
it's not
is.
moving relative to the detector. They're fixed to the table. In the frame of the detector,
Oh, you're talking about like not when it's like when you're not actually like physically moving the table when it's just sitting on Earth?
Either way, from the lab frame when the table's stationary, or in the lab frame when the table's spinning, right? The detector.
Yeah, but because the thing is rotating, the path through spacetime doesn't close up.
Rotating with respect
to any reference frame, it doesn't close up. It doesn't matter which reference frame you use. In every reference frame, it doesn't close up. I can send you a paper on this if you want.
Yeah, I've seen your Tartaglia paper you brought up before. He doesn't.
There's other papers too. If you don't like that one,
read his paper. I've seen like 10
so to be clear,
12
have you
but
taken a course on special relativity?
Formally, okay. I'm actually taking one right now, but I've learned most of this.
Do you think that you could take a Lorentz transformation? Like, is that something that you know how to do?
I could if I just grab the formula off of
So Alan couldn't. So I wouldn't trust anything Alan has to say on this matter. So if you have a particular criticism of Tartaglia, if you think that there's like an error in his mathematics, by all means, go ahead and point that out. I can point you to other papers too. But the mathematics are sound.
Well, let me. I haven't even said what my contention is. Yeah. Well, so my contention. Yeah. Right. When you look at his paper, he creates this cylindrical coordinate system centered about the central axis of the table, about which it's rotating, right? With respect to that center.
Yeah.
But the problem is, right, like that's fine. You can do that. All he's doing is playing a game, because in reality, the measurement is on the edge of
it doesn't
the
matter
table.
which coordinate system you use to describe what's happening. It'll happen in every coordinate system. It's just you pick a nice, convenient coordinate system. That's all he's doing.
No, because there's in his system on the axis of rotation, and then takes measurements with respect to the axis. He's not taking measurements with respect to anything.
It's just a coordinates. It's just a cylindrical coordinate system. That's all it is.
No, he's
coordinates.
I got a fixed coordinate system that's rigid and doesn't move, like an X and
you
Y
can do that
axis,
in special relativity.
making a grid across the center.
Mm-hmm.
I know, but he's making a grid across the emitter and detector. Rotate clockwise, counterclockwise. You'll get a longer or shorter path each way around. Right. He is invoking, right, a play change in path length.
No, he's not invoking a change in anything. He's not invoking a special place in space. All he's doing is he's picking a convenient coordinate reference frame. That's all he's doing. You're allowed to do that. It doesn't matter which coordinate system you choose. It'll always give you the same coincidences. It's just with special relativity, you work with the easiest coordinate system because the math gets messy otherwise.
Let me be very clear. I want to be very specific. The reason why, because we're talking about actually describing the observation, the experiment, the effect, is because under the principles of special relativity, in the experiment, the emitter and detector are always at a fixed distance from one another.
Well, except not in space-time. You're thinking spatially, not space-time.
Their frame. Laws of physics have to be equally valid.
All reference frames. Yep.
Right? In all. Yeah, so if I take the frame of the table itself, where I'm going to pretend I'm the detector, I'm not moving. The world's spinning around me, right?
Sure.
The world's spinning around me. What I observe is the light going clock produce a fringe shift in the
there's also going to be time dilation. Not time dilation, length contraction, right? There's going to be all sorts of relativistic effects that you have to account for, that you would see.
What? Length contraction.
Everything else is moving relative to you.
Created by what?
So those things would have length contraction and time dilation.
It's moving away from the outside of the table, right? Not within the region of the table that I'm on.
So to be clear, you're just working in a non-inertial reference frame then? Because in a non-inertial reference frame, then
I'm talking about the table.
Yeah. So if you're the detector, right? You are no longer in an inertial reference frame. Because you're spinning. It makes it non-inertial.
So spinning relative to what? I could establish anything as an inertial
one way to
frame.
tell if you're in a non-inertial reference frame is if Newton's laws don't hold.
Newton's bucket?
No, I mean if F equals ma is no longer true.
You mean spinning a bucket and centrifugal force causing water to go up the side?
That's one way to know that you're in a non-inertial reference frame. And so special relativity doesn't make the claim that in non-inertial reference frames the speed of light is constant.
So you're basically saying that rotation is a special
it is. In special relativity, it absolutely is.
Different
of course.
from translation. Did you know that the Sagnac effect was applied to general relativity?
So special relativity has two postulates. Do you know what the two postulates are? You're in a class. You should know these.
Yeah, the constancy of C and the universality of the applicability of the laws of physics.
So careful.
Reference frames.
It is constant in at least one system of inertial coordinates. If you're in a non-inertial coordinate frame, that postulate doesn't apply.
Yeah, so let me just ask you this, right? In the frame of the table, it's easier to just do the math, or not necessarily, we don't have the table, right? What would be the math, the math that would predict
you could run it through if you want. Why don't you ask your special relativity professor to see if they can derive that in class? It's an annoying challenge because it's a pain to do. That's why we use nice coordinates. That's the beauty of relativity.
No, I have the answer. I mean, I can give you a paper from Engelhardt right here. It's C plus or minus V.
Yeah, and so you could.
How can I use classical velocity composition to accurately predict?
Well, I suspect that that's not a relativistic derivation.
Frame when.
Yeah. So
It's not. It's classical, but he does.
Well,
That's
I
the
suspect he made a
correct
mistake.
relativistic. Oh,
So
he
here's the lovely
Here,
thing
I'll go
about
ahead and give you the
special
link.
relativity, and the kinds of calculations that Tartaglia did. All of the calculations that you do are coordinate independent, right? Everything is Lorentz invariant. So as long as you are translating between inertial frames, then these calculations will run through identically. Where are you taking special relativity, by the way, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah,
At a university or? Okay, you should ask your professor this.
Yeah, at a university. I've showed her, but we haven't actually got to that unit yet, and she'd never even heard of the Sagnac effect. So, but anyways, I don't know if your slab frame is a preferred frame. You don't think that the Earth frame is a preferred frame. You don't think that it's like a unique frame.
It's a
with
useful
respect
frame.
to which we can take.
I don't think it's a preferred frame though.
Measurements of absolute motion, like absolute space, or being able to detect
Yeah, I
absolute
don't think
motion
so.
with respect to it.
And I think that there's pretty good evidence that like there are other frames that can be more useful. So
okay, so
no, I've never
there's
heard of
another
that.
experiment. Okay, I can give you their paper too. But
what's the name of the experiment?
Dufour and Prunier,
How do you spell it?
1 second. One moment. Here, I'll type it in chat. It's on a fringe displacement of fringes recorded on
Sorry,
the
repeat it one more
platform
time.
in uniform rotation. So they were also doing.
Okay, I found it.
I messaged it to you.
I got
it's
it.
on a.
Don't worry.
All right.
Okay,
do you have a university library access to be able to get the paper, or do you need me to give you the paper? Okay. Okay. So what they did exactly the same. The only thing that they changed was instead of placing the emitter and detector that are on the edge of the table, instead of placing those on the table, they mounted them fixed to the wall in the lab. And then they spin shift that they did when it was mounted on the table.
Sorry, you have to explain. So detector, emitter on the table. And then what's the table doing? How is the table involved? Where's the table? But they're on the wall. The detector and emitter are on the wall. Who cares what the table's doing? Why is the table? What is the table? How is the table related to anything?
Fact, like the original experiment, right? There's a mirror.
Oh, okay. So the sure.
Sends the,
I see what you mean.
Yeah, so it sends the light clockwise and counterclockwise, right? But the only difference is instead of the emitter and detector being, and then leave the mirrors still on the table, so it still fires it back to the wall. So they're still doing the same thing. It's just the only difference is where the emitter and detector are mounted. So when they mount it to the inertial frame of the plus or minus V of the table,
sure, I'd have to look at it. But I imagine that this has I imagine that it has a relativistic derivation.
Well, it shows that the two are equivalent.
So look, nobody ever said that there are some things that you can't reproduce with an ether theory. You absolutely can, but there are some things that you can't. There are some things that you cannot explain with an ether, for example. And that's why we prefer relativistic theory, that's all.
But it's a first.
Okay, so you know that the Sagnac effect is not necessarily first order, right?
Velocity dependent friendship.
It's first order at leading order. It doesn't mean that it's only first order.
Okay.
Can you wait? Hold on. Just to be clear, can you tell me what a first order effect is, and how it differs from?
Yeah, it would be the one that has the great. Yeah, it would be the one that has the greatest contribution to the effect and use power. Whereas the second order and higher effects, if you look like comparing to like a Taylor series or something, those would be to the higher powers.
In particular, the Sagnac effect has a first order approximation and has higher order terms as well in a relativistic derivation. Now, I haven't looked at this paper by Engelhardt, but I'm a little bit skeptical, and I suspect he probably made a mistake. But was this actually published anywhere? Well, it's on the archive.
It's on archive. It's on archive.org. let
yeah,
me
so I found
check
it.
really
I found it in
quick.
this Annales de la Fondation Louis de Broglie. So I've never heard of this journal, but maybe it's a good journal.
Yeah, I mean, he came from
No,
the
it's not.
Max Planck Institute for
Wait
Plasma
a minute.
Physics.
Is this
Engelhart.
what's the impact factor of this journal? Oh. Oh yeah. This is a terrible journal.
What? You're just poisoning the well by talking
No,
about.
what I'm saying is
the
I'm not sure. I'm
journal.
not so
I don't-
yes, you're right, it was published, but I'm not sure how reliable it was. So I'd have to look at it. I've never seen this paper before. So maybe he debunked relativity and everybody missed it 8 years or 10 years ago. But you should be skeptical, because if this was genuine, it would have been published in a, because he's a an actual scientist, right? So he absolutely would have been able to get it published in a serious journal. But the fact that he wasn't should make you skeptical.
That's because
Literally, people publish stuff that disagrees with Einstein all the time.
that's fine, but stuff like this that actually puts a nail in the
Okay, no,
coffin
that's
of
just conspiracy
Einstein,
brain.
people
I'm
don't
sorry, I
wanna
can't help you with that.
publish it.
Have you
I mean,
attempted to publish anything
okay,
before?
but no, I'm
Okay,
not.
so then you don't have any like authority to speak on in that regard with that. So there's no reason why you should think that, except that it feeds into your conspiracy.
Look, bro, we can agree to disagree, but I also encourage you to read the Forum Prune, because, like I said, to be able to read it and cover it and be able to talk about it again in the future, I respect that. All I want to say is that if we can just, if you would grant me, right, that I'm correct in talking result with the emitter and detector mounted on the wall in the lab as they were with it mounted on the rotating table, that proves that there's an equivalence
Wait, we've already agreed.
effect between those
We've already
two
agreed
frames.
that ether
You've
effects,
got,
at least low order ether effects, can match relativistic effects. I agree with you on that.
but hold on, but you can't have C plus or minus V. You can't have some
How do you know?
super tiny
Why not?
compared to C velocity.
If you're working in a
Because
non-inertial
if
reference frame, you absolutely do. No. What I'm talking
in
about
the
is
lab
like
is an
if you're
inertial
working in a
frame, bro.
non-inertial reference frame, then you can have that effect. You can have the C plus or minus V. That's fine. And it just depends on what reference frame you're working in.
The lab is the,
So it depends on where you do the calculation. If you want to do the
Okay,
calculation in the
but
lab frame, then you won't have that, but you'll get a different effect. You'll pick up that first order effect in a different way.
but you did. But
Wait, they didn't do any calculations.
the lab.
They didn't do any like theoretical analysis at all. I'm looking at the paper right now. Wait. You understand that the way that you get the observed fringe shift depends on the frame in which you do the calculation. The way that you do the experiment has nothing to do with the frame in which you do the calculation, right? The way that you do the experiment has absolutely nothing to do with the frame in which you do the calculation.
Oh, the way that you do the experiment has nothing to do with the way that
the way that you would like predict the effect of some experiment. You can do some experiment in some convoluted way that requires some weird frame, and then you can make a prediction about what happens in some completely other frame. Like there's no issue with that.
Yeah,
so it depends on, like, if you're working in a non-inertial frame, you can get C plus or minus V, because special relativity doesn't say anything about the speed of light being constant in non-inertial frames. If you're working in an inertial frame, then you'll pick up that C plus or minus V from doing a Lorentz transform of a different thing. Like, sorry, not a C plus or minus V. You'll pick up the same effect from some other source.
Hold on. It actually says here, if you go to page number 161.
I only have one that goes up to page 15.
It's the last page before, literally the last page right before the bibliography.
Okay.
It literally says, by introducing these numerical values into the expression of the shift del of 6 mu for the two directions of rotation, which yields 0.053 of a fringe according to the classical theory, and 0.005 of a fringe for the relativistic theory. according to this last theory than according to the preceding classical one. The relativistic theory thus seems to be in complete disagreement with the classical theory.
Wait,
That's
should we read the
literally
rest?
on the last page of the...
So, but given that as the note of Mr. Largevin,
Sure.
so I just haven't read it. Given that as the note of Mr. Largevin appeared to allow the value to be reported higher, we have considered that the center where the theoretical relativist must be presumably placed can be arbitrarily selected. The relativistic theory is found contrary to agreement with the classical theory in the experiment if the center is obligatorily collinear with the center of rotation of the disk. The only point on the disk which can be the permanent origin of Galilean axes not subjected to the rotational movement of the unit. So this is saying that if you force the relativistic theory to do a calculation in a place like using Galilean relativity rather than special relativity, then yeah, you're going to get a disagreement. But I mean, like, they say this, I just don't know where, like, they didn't provide the calculation, so I can't check and see if they made any mistakes. So no. So how did they get how did they get 0.005 infringes according to the relativistic theory? They didn't show their work.
It shows the formula.
You know that the formulas
there.
are the same, right?
Yeah,
they're
but
both
it's got
A prime. They're both A prime.
No, bro. A prime is.
I'm literally looking at it right
classic,
now.
and
It says
A
A prime
is
and
for...
A prime.
You might have a different version of the paper than I'm looking at because
Was
your
it, like,
last
translated
paragraph
from
was
French or
worded a little
something?
different. No, manuscript received 1st August 1942, but it literally says in the preceding paragraph, A prime is 1777
Yeah, so how did they calculate
centimeters
those?
squared, and A is 168 centimeters. Show the geometry.
No. Where's the actual calculation? There's no calculation anywhere in this paper unless you have a different version than me.
Oh no, they're giving the values for the.
So
the
they don't actually
circuit
do a
that they
relativistic
created.
calculation. It looks like I just don't know where they get that from.
I got you.
Like, I just scrolled through it. There's no equations, right? I mean, they'll say like tau is equal to this for like some measured quantity, and then they'll say that, like, they'll label things with letters like the distance of this is L prime or whatever, but like they don't actually do any calculations.
It's
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 an experimental
because
paper. It's not a theory paper, so it's not surprising that they don't do
one
that.
of
But
them.
it's strange that they would give a prediction without actually showing where that prediction came from.
They are showing that. Okay, figure 6. So you have to go to figure 6.
Yep, I'm looking at it now.
Okay, so figure 6 has the mirror array, right? It says the area included in the sector based upon the light center C of rotation. The paragraph on the I'm on the, the last page before. Yeah, it has an algebraic value because the surface of the small basic triangle ED must be counted like negative.
Yeah, where did they get that from?
8. So.
Oh, this is just area, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So why are
that's you use the area?
No, it's the Sagnac effect is not just about area. It's about area for simple enclosed systems. No, simple like enclosed, like if it's like a flat thing, right? But it's not a flat thing, obviously, because it's. Sorry, it convexes up. Like, so I can absolutely see why they thought that relativity didn't agree with this, because they were working.
FDE, okay.
Well, yeah, but they're just trying to use the area of just the table, but that's not the entire light circuit, right? You have to take into account the entire light area. The point is you can't. So the area formula works if your entire light circuit is coplanar. But the entire light circuit is not coplanar, right? Yes, and that's important. That's an important part of it.
But then how do they still get the classical derivation?
The classical derivation doesn't have anything to do with the relativistic derivation. They're different things.
Okay, but the classical prediction.
Yes, the
as they
Sagnac
did
effect
in the
generally
original
agrees with
Sagnac
relativity
experiment.
as far as, or the relativistic, the first order result of the relativistic derivation and the classical derivation usually agree for the Sagnac effect. Yeah.
Right, and then it says, well, O, where the observer is pulled by the disk, it's
I can never understand
using
what they're saying.
the
Like these old papers are so hard to
relativistic
understand.
assumption. So O is where the detect. So C being Tartaglia's explanation of cylindrical
Yeah,
coordinate system.
so the mistake that they're making is that they're assuming that the simple formula where you just multiply the area of the table, or the area of like the light path on the table by the, what is it, the angular velocity or whatever, and divided by like the speed of light squared or whatever. They're making that mistake that's just what relativity predicts. It's not. It's more complicated than that.
Okay, bro.
I mean, like this was just no. I mean, Tartaglia. Actually, it might not be Tartaglia that does this derivation. There's like a general derivation for an arbitrary path that takes into account what the actual shape of the path is, and I can pull it up for you if you want.
Yeah, well, Tartaglia is getting
Again,
it
don't
from
care
Paul
where people are getting
Langevin.
it from. I care about what the result is, right? One sec, let me pull it up.
Yeah, but you would have to show that the derivation has a physical meaning because it's not detected at C, which is the center of the table. They say relative to C, it would produce this fringe. It's not actually
it's absolutely Tartaglia that does it.
It's measured.
It doesn't matter where you measure it. Tartaglia does it for an arbitrary path. It doesn't matter where you measure it. You're just picking an arbitrary reference frame. Like it doesn't matter.
Okay, so
like this is a fundamental misunderstanding of relativity that you inherited from Alan, unfortunately. Well,
no,
I literally had this conversation with him last week on Discord, and he was making the exact same errors you were making.
If you have the table and you do the measurement on
measurements
the table,
aren't in frames. Calculations are in frames. Frames are not physical things.
You are if we pretend that I could just shrink ray myself, okay, and I could stand on the table at the detector, measuring the fringes.
It doesn't matter where you're. The fringes are the fringes happen. The fringes happen at the detector. It doesn't matter where you're standing. The point is that you can do the calculation from any reference frame. The reference frame doesn't have anything to do with where the actual measurement happens. Reference frames are arbitrary.
So if I just plug in the fringes to the formula, then I get
in a non-inertial reference frame, sure.
V, and then if I do the same thing, you're saying I would
you can get that in a non-inertial reference frame. If you want to do it in an inertial if you want to do it in an inertial reference frame, then you have to use an inertial reference frame, and then you can assume the constancy of C.
Which is what Dufour and Prunier did, and
but they used the wrong. They did the wrong calculation.
Dufour and Prunier did it, and they did the wrong.
They just applied the naive Sagnac effect formula, and that doesn't apply for a non-coplanar, rigidly rotating experiment. Like it's just not the correct formula.
Well,
the fringes don't care about the frame.
Oh, as if they're with respect to an absolute.
No, the fringes are with respect to two. The fringes are relative, right? It's relative to each other. That's what fringes are.
Relative to what?
Yeah. You have two light beams that have different phases, and the fringe happens when one phase is different from the other phase. So it's literally like a relative statement.
Right, which is
it's literally a relative.
So
what we're talking about here, we're talking about the coincidence of two things. It's literally the waves having different phases relative to one another.
Which is created by a change in path
length. Path lengths are Lorentz invariant, right? Between two points in space-time, the space-time interval is Lorentz invariant.
When I said the two fringes,
Actually, no, the
I meant
geodesic
the
distance is
fringe
Lorentz
of the
invariant.
When I said the two fringes, I meant
There aren't
the
fringes aren't in
the
frames.
frame of the lab. Okay, got it right. But as cat,
Wait, why
that's
is
my
hold on?
point
Why
to you.
is
That's my
why did you
point
link
to
me
you.
a Vixra
When
article?
they
I
because
Vixra
it's
articles aren't
another
worth your time.
analysis of deformed protease. The fringe that was measured on the wall of the lab was the same fringe that was
Yes.
measured on
You can
the
have the same
rotating
fringe in
table.
many different experiments. Yeah.
That path links were the same, or the changes in path links were the
Could be.
same.
Could be, or it could
Right.
or it could be that they were off by a integer multiple of the
Okay.
wavelength of the light. Right.
The frame of the lab were equivalent.
No, it has nothing to do with the frames. Like, you're confusing what a frame is. What? Can you tell me what you think a frame is?
Oh my gosh. This conversation's going downhill, and I don't want it to do that.
You should like.
I want to like take a breath and
It sounds like you're making the same mistakes that Alan makes, and Alan makes very specific mistakes, which means that you got it from him.
Apparently, I'm still roboting. By the way,
I don't know how to fix that.
But okay. I'll try it one more time. The Sagnac effect is caused by a change in path length.
Caused by a change in phase
of the two light beams.
Caused by a change in phase of the light.
With respect to what? Yeah, change in phase.
It's the path length. Path lengths are path lengths.
Relative to what?
So
length with respect
space-time
to
intervals
what?
are Lorentz invariant. They're the same in every reference frame.
What is the distance between the emitter and detector changing?
I don't know if you heard what I just said and you didn't understand it. Space-time intervals.
With respect to space-time?
That's like the name for it. You should know what a space-time interval is if you're taking a relativity class. You know what a space-time interval is, right?
Just answer the question.
I already did. You should know what. Wait, I already answered your question. It's not with respect to anything. Space-time intervals are Lorentz invariant.
No, you didn't. Right? Motion's relative.
Yeah, of course.
So
I'm not talking about the
what?
motion. I'm talking about path lengths.
I know.
A path length isn't
That's
about.
That's my point. The change in path length is caused by the motion path length creating a phase shift, creating a fringe
I don't know
pattern.
how much clearer I can.
So therefore,
the path lengths, space-time intervals in particular, are Lorentz invariant. They don't depend on any choice of frame.
So phase shift occurs, right?
Yeah, there's something physical happening, and that's going to change the structure of the or the the path that the light takes. Absolutely, something physical happening. Yeah.
Okay, so the motion causes a change and is created by the motion. So motion with respect to
it's just that there's motion at all, right? There, like, if you're in the frame of if you're in the frame,
so absolute motion.
If you're in the frame of the table, it's the motion of everything else. If you're in the frame of the lab, then it's the motion of the table. It's the fact that there's motion, right?
Okay, but if okay.
By the way, Jess, thank you for $5. I appreciate you.
So you're saying
in the non-inertial frame of the
table. Let's go there, because that's okay. In the frame of the detector, right?
Okay, yeah, you can work in the frame of the detector if you want. Is the detector on the table?
Yeah, there. Okay, Yes, it's mounted rigid. Touching about the wall, but we'll do the table first.
Mm-hmm.
In the frame of the detector on the table, its motion causes a change in path length.
Is this
Respect
inertial
to
motion
what?
or is
Because
this
it's motion
non-inertial
with
motion?
respect to what?
Like, are we talking about a rotating table, or are we talking about like the linear Sagnac effect?
Well, I'm talking about
Okay, I haven't read de
Fournier
Fournier,
and
so I can't
Sagnac,
really comment on it.
right? So it's
Okay.
it's the same.
So the point is that I mean, like, you can just look at this in the cylindrical frame that Tartaglia uses. There's no issue there.
Why don't
You can,
we use
it's just
the
the
lab
math is messy.
frame?
No, the
math
relativistic
is C
math
plus or
is
minus
messy,
V.
right? Because you're in a non-inertial reference frame, and you have to track the, you know, the detector, I guess, if the detector is the thing that you want to use. Like, if you don't think the math is messy, just do it. Just do it in the relativistic context and prove that relativity is wrong, and go get your Nobel Prize. I haven't read Englehart's paper, but I'm a little bit skeptical, but I'll read it. I'll take a look.
He referenced several other people's
the
papers.
bibliography is did he actually reference anybody for the calculation of the? Oh no, I'm sorry. I was thinking of the Prunier or whatever. Yeah, so let's. I mean, like, yeah, I haven't read this, so I can't comment on it really at all.
The point is, man. The point is if you're on the table. Okay,
well, no, it's non-inertial because Newton's laws don't apply to it. That's just what we mean by non-inertial.
Okay, which yeah, if there's a place in which they don't apply, but you treat, motion as relative, then that means we can measure forces.
No, it just means that inertial motion and non-inertial motion are distinguished from each other. That's all.
Okay.
That's not inconsistent with relativity.
Well, even in Dufour and Prunier's paper, yeah, but even in Dufour and Prunier's paper,
I know they do. I understand that. I understand that.
And in Sagnac, he also gets it with
we've been over this now 3 times
with respect to the lab.
That, yes, the ether theory sometimes agrees with relativity and gets the right answer. That sometimes happens. There are other times where it doesn't.
If you don't use it, you have to treat space itself or the external world or just the lab.
No, you don't. You don't have to treat anything as an absolute frame. You're confusing picking a reference frame with some absolute thing. Picking a reference frame isn't absolute. It's a choice.
No, in the frame of the table is where the measurement is
I'm going to lose my mind.
And performed. The effect
measurements don't happen in frames.
Measured in the table. Okay,
frames are abstract mathematical tools.
If motion is relative, then any type of motion has to be with respect to another.
If there is motion, then
in the frame of the
there
table,
will be motion in every frame. Yes.
But if the frame itself is said to be moving with respect to another,
so
frame,
you can have
right?
you can have two frames that are moving relative to each other. Yes.
Right, where I don't see myself moving.
You never see yourself moving in any frame.
There's a French. Okay, got it. In the frame of the table, I'm mounted. My feet are mounted, spinning around me. But this fringe that I'm measuring is not based on motion with respect to the world around me.
Wait a minute. Sorry, you're confused.
Exclusively in my frame.
The other side of the table, say, is not in the same frame as you. You can't describe it with the same frame because it's moving in the other direction. It's moving in the other direction.
Yes, it is. That emitter.
Wait, are we talking about the Fournier or whatever case now, or are we talking about where you're bolted to the table and it's spinning?
I'm talking about original Sagnac bolted to the table.
It doesn't matter what the emitters do. My point is that
to the table.
even the other side of the table itself is moving relative to you, right? Like, it's not inertial.
The other side of the table is not moving relative to me.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Emitter and detector
Yeah.
are
So,
literally...
but the point is you can't use the same inertial frame to describe the motion of the other side of the table, though. It's not the same reference frame.
That's
no, it's not.
It is, bro.
It's not.
That's my point. Is
if you put an origin,
if I take my phone right now, I'm looking at my
on the
phone.
table, one place, you'll have one reference frame. A reference frame is essentially an origin and a set of vectors, right? So you plop down your origin, you plop down your vectors where you are. If you go down to the other place, the other side of the table, the origin and the vectors will be different. So it is just a different frame.
No, bro.
Do you know what a frame is? Can you tell me what a frame is? I just told you what a frame is. Do you remember it?
Hold on. If I use my phone as an example, I've got my camera at the top, a little camera down here where my microphone is, right? And I mount it on my phone. And then in my room, I start spinning my phone. That camera will always be other than the top of my phone.
It doesn't matter. Like, that's not what a frame is, right? A frame isn't what you see.
The difference between... But in order to create a change in path length, and there is none of that.
So
there shouldn't be a fringe.
If you want to do a calculation in a non-inertial frame, you can do that. You're more than welcome to do that. In fact, I suggest you try it. You're taking a relativity course, it'd be a good exercise. Just try doing it. See what happens.
All right, bro.
Like just do it.
It's been good talking to you. Yeah.
And for what it's worth, I think that you're probably the first and only flat earther who has, and I'm believing you when you say that you're taking a relativity course, because no other flat earther ever has.
Also not true, but we don't have to agree on that either.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you go because we've been talking for a while, but thanks for being here, man. Take care. Oh, I cut him off too early. All right, I'm going to bring on another guest from TikTok, and then we'll continue with another guest on YouTube. So Nathan, you're going to be next, okay? Yeah, he was making the same mistakes that Alan makes, which makes me think that he got these ideas from Alan, which is just kind of a bummer. Because Alan doesn't really know what reference frames are. Like, it's... Come on, TikTok. All right, let's talk to Pre-Fire Patrick. Pre-Fire, how's it go? Oh. By the way, if I missed some of your gifts, you'll have to forgive me because sometimes I miss them. So, by the way, if you do like what you're seeing, consider liking the live both on YouTube and on TikTok. It's a cool thing to do. And then also you can support me if you want to. You know, there's like Cash App and stuff like that, but you don't have to. Somebody DM'd me. All right, this person's not connecting. I'm gonna disconnect them and move on to somebody else. Yep, we're still doing the deconstruction zone. As far as I can tell, there's been no delay, no cancellation, so I think that we're good. The one true Cartesian coordinate system emanates from God's rear end. True. So true. Come on. There we go. All right, let's bring up 3Vix.
Hello?
3Vix, how's it going?
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing all right. What God do you believe in, and how are you going to convince me of it?
I mean, my first question is, like, what are you looking for to be convinced by? Like, are you looking for physical evidence?
Well, I don't know what'll convince me, but if it's real, I mean, well, I know I can give you an example of something that will convince me. I don't know what the minimum to convince me is, but yeah, like any convincing argument, basically. Whether it's based on physical evidence or based off of deductive reasoning or abduction or, you know, something else.
I'm sure you've heard like all those arguments, like all those religious arguments, like the theological, all those, right?
Yeah, I've heard most of them. But maybe you have the new one. Maybe you have it, or maybe you have a better way to convince me of one of the old ones.
Okay, this is gonna be really hard to do, especially to a guy who probably like you have a degree in physics or no?
I have 3 degrees in physics.
Yeah, that's gonna be really hard to do then. Someone who has 3 degrees in physics.
Well, if
love
it's true,
physics.
it shouldn't be hard.
Okay. I guess I would come to say that like no, that wouldn't be good. It's just is it fine if I have like time to think of what I want to say? Because it's a lot of information to process and to like output.
Okay. So what do you want to talk about then?
In the time being, as I'm like thinking, I guess just introduce yourself to me while I'm thinking, because I'm trying to think about what to say. Like I'm trying to think about how to sentence it properly.
Okay. Yeah. I've never believed in God, as far back as I can remember, and I'm generally like some sort of physicalist. I'm married.
I see.
I don't know. What
well,
else do you want to know?
I mean, one thing from my understanding is actually people who get like a PhD in physics tend to have a pretty high IQ, actually, if that's true.
Well, thank you. That does tend to be true, but I'm not making any claims about myself.
I wouldn't be surprised if you're pretty smart. Okay. I guess I would come to say that like my first reasoning would be that that like there's a lot of compelling arguments to believe that God does exist. And even then, like if you look at statistics, right? For example, like when you look at statistics of physicists, right? They often, most of them tend to actually be really religious. And the reason
they
why
don't.
is because what?
Physicists and biologists are the least religious groups among scientists, and it's generally like only 35% or something like that of physicists actually believe in a god.
Oh, because I was talking to my aerospace engineering teacher, and he told me, like, from his experience of being a physicist, that like a lot of them tend to be religious. But maybe I got the wrong perception.
Yeah. So Pew Research did a study on this, and they found. I'm just pulling it up. This is from like 10 years ago, so it's probably more in favor of atheism now. But 10 years ago, where's the? So scientists as a whole. Only 31% believed, or 33% believed in God. But physicists in particular, I know it's somewhere here. Physicists in particular, I know they did this, or maybe it was on a different one. It's on this one. This is from 2018. Oh yeah. Where is it? These are countries. Okay, I can't find it right now. I'll find it later if you're interested. But point is that yeah, physicists and biologists tend to be less religious than the rest of the scientific community, and that's probably not so surprising.
I see. And I guess I would like to stay here. So I have like a little written paragraph of like my own arguments, I guess, of why God exists. But it's like a paragraph with like separate arguments. So like they're different arguments, and it's to give you an idea of how each argument works.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on.
Go on.
I think your audio is funky. Can you give me an audio test really quick?
My audio is a little bit bad because when I drop my phone, no, it's written. It's not ChatGPT. ChatGPT is useless. If you're trying to debate people with ChatGPT, I'm sorry, but you're not going to get far with that.
True.
And a lot of people do that on here, I bet you. I'm pretty sure people just get on ChatGPT and just start debating you about
They
things.
absolutely do. You're right.
And I'm surprised that the dude didn't even know what a frame is. A frame is like a quantity or like a measurement of like position or acceleration or something like that.
Close, not quite though, but close.
Because I kind of did relativity on my own time when I was younger. but
Cool.
not exactly. But I guess the first thing I'd like to address is like it's just this argument. I'm sure you're familiar with the cosmological argument, right?
Like of the Coulomb variety or some other
It,
cosmological argument?
it addresses that like various questions of why the universe exists and the universe and its vastness and the complexity requires an explanation for its vastness, but also
Yeah. I'm familiar with various cosmological arguments. Yeah.
yeah, and like every effect has like a cause, and the universe itself is an effect of that. But also, one thing I would also like to get into is consciousness too. Consciousness is an interesting thing to get into because, like, how can exactly like consciousness come into play with evolution itself? As I'm pretty sure when Darwinian stated that consciousness is a being of like intelligence or something like that. If my understanding, if I got it wrong, just clarify with me.
Yeah, I'm not a neurologist, so I don't really know much about consciousness at all.
Okay, so okay, then I'll just no, maybe not consciousness. Okay, so like I guess one thing is like I mentioned is the anthropic principle.
Yeah, what about it?
Essentially, that which states that the universe is. Okay, wait. Sorry, I'm not really that good at like debating people. Like I don't know how to debate properly. Like, how am I supposed? Like I don't know how to do.
Wait a
that.
minute, hold on, I gotta check. 3Vix, how old are you?
Me, I'm 19.
Okay. I just had to check for TikTok rules.
Yeah, 2006. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it's just I don't really know how to like debate properly because and also it's like there's 500 people in here. It's very nervous to say something because like I'm too nervous to like say something that's just out of pocket.
Don't worry, I don't think that you'll say anything more out of pocket than the last guy.
So, okay, wait. Like, okay, I guess yeah. So like the anthropic principle, which states that the universe is finely tuned for life, but provides yet another argument for God's existence. And like an example I'll give you is like the specific conditions are needed for life, such as the right temperature and the presence of water and the ability of the atmosphere to support life, or not the product of chance. There's just it would just be merely unlikely to for that to just go in all coincidence.
By the way,
As
that's not the anthropic principle.
yeah, it is.
The anthropic principle states that an observer will find themselves in a place where it is possible for observers to exist. That's what the anthropic principle is about. It's not about like there being water here and stuff like it's. In fact, the anthropic principle explains at least some of the fine tuning, the apparent fine tuning of the universe away.
I mean, yeah, it kind of gets into it, and that's why I was going on to speak. But yeah, like such as the conditions of the universe, how it's so unique, but also the emergence of conscious life and the yeah, such as that, and like how intelligent a being is, and how that's exactly designed itself, and how just random forces happen and so happen to make such a universe itself, but also such intelligent beings.
I mean, there's a lot of assumptions baked into those questions, though, right? Like for example, how do you know it's random, rather than how do you know it's not just determined that it had to be that way?
I see. That makes sense. I guess I would come to say is like um I would say that though it's random because I guess the possibility just shows otherwise that it wouldn't make sense that that there was like greater demand for that to be true that was supposed to be like that. I would think it's more random
Why?
because of that. And um I guess it's because like how do I put this? Sorry, it's just I'm very nervous at the
You're
same
fine.
time.
It's just you and me, dude.
Anyway, I think like a thing to do is for me. Here, I'll just put my phone somewhere else. I'm not looking at.
But now you're very quiet.
Oh, okay. Wait, is this okay? Is this good enough?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Wait. What was your question again? Because sorry, my brain is.
How do you, yeah, no, it's fine. How do you know that it was random rather than it's being the only way it could have been?
I see. I guess I would say it's a let me think here. this is a question that's actually, well, I guess like for me, or not for me, sorry. That like I would say that because from my understanding, right, like I'll get back into it, is that like the precise fine tuning, right, like one strong aspect of principle is that like the observation that fundamental constants of the nature, like gravitational constants or the strength or the electromagnetic force and like um, elementary particles, all that jazz.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know much about it, so don't listen. Quote me on it if I got something wrong because I'm not that good at physics than you
That's
are.
fine. That's fine.
And the masses of like elementary particles are perfectly aligned, right? To make the possibles, if if these constants were altered by even a small fraction, things wouldn't have exist. And to think that it's it's a demand, I would think that like if the force of gravity were slightly stronger, then stars wouldn't form correctly, would be unstable, for example. To think that that's all a clear path, it would be very improbable, just as probability goes against it.
So there's 2 points to be made. The first is that it's really not as fine-tuned as you think. Let me pull up my there's a paper, or it's not like an academic paper, it's like a survey. Let me pull it up really quick because I have so I can actually pull up the actual ranges that we know the constants can take, but it's quite a wide range. It's not just like a tiny fraction, like it's quite a wide range. So let me just pull up the paper really quick and I can quote it for you, so I'm not lying to you.
What constitutes that's fine tuning then? That's a good question.
It is a good question. So there is a is it in my other sheet? Might be in my other sheet. The point is that we have to, yeah. So there's basically 2 questions, right? So what do you think the universe would look like if it wasn't fine tuned?
I guess it would be disastrous. That's my first, I guess, agreement.
But there'd still be life, right? So you could still say it's fine tuned for life, couldn't you?
I guess what you're trying to say is that to the observer, it's fine tuned to us.
It'll always, yeah. I mean that's one point. Yeah, it'll always appear fine tuned to the observer.
I see.
And in fact, there's actually, like, in some sense, it's really not that fine-tuned for life, because one would think that the more fine-tuned for life it is, the more likely life is to exist, right? But
that makes sense. We would have an abundance of like many...
You'd think it could be more fine-tuned, right?
I see.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find this thing because it's actually quite interesting. Like you can change this. You can change.
Say, like, one of the primary issues was like my argument is that like it's merely subjective perception, and like fine tuning of like the universe is based on like what an observer wants or believes to be true, instead of based on objectivism.
Well, yeah, sort of. Oh, I think I found it. I should really save this link because it's a useful link. So this was it's like a report. It's not like a scientific paper, but it's just a report, like a collection of other results. And if it loads, I'll tell you what the actual the apparent fine-tuning of the universe is. And it's really not as small of a range as you think. But I don't know why it's not loading, so...
Yeah, no, me, I can't go look up like papers because I'm on my phone.
No, that I understand. So the all I'm getting at is if I remember correctly, essentially like you could rescale basically all of the constants by like a factor of like 5 or 10, and it'd still be plausible to have life.
I see. Yeah.
Now you can't make gravity 10,000 times stronger. Because then that would definitely screw things up. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about like doubling it or halving it, right?
That makes sense, because what you're saying is that like fine tuning is simply a subjective perception, ignores the objective nature of like the physical constants themselves, and that like these constants are not just adjusted by human belief, but rather on it's like adjusted to simply the the existence of to exist at the precise values essentially.
Yeah, essentially.
I see. I guess I would come to say though, even if one were to argue that the universe seems to be fine tuned, I guess I guess it's like I guess I would say that it's improbable. How do I put this in? It's like I don't know, I guess I would say that the probability of constant aligning in such way that allows incredibly for small, for instance, like the fine tuning of cosmological concepts, which governs the expansion rate of the universe, has been calculated to be a precise that. How do I put this? To be a precise. It's hard to put this in words because I'm like kind of educated with it, but not 100%. Sorry, I'm very stressed. That's why. Whenever I'm stressed, my brain is kind of like shutting off.
It's okay. You're good.
I'm acting like a freaking. I'm acting like. Sorry. Sorry. I'm probably one of like the most nervous people you've probably ever talked to.
I've talked with more nervous people.
I'm telling you, I don't do good in quality.
You're doing fine.
Before I get on to making my statement, I would also like to ask too, like what physics do you do?
I do general relativity, and so I do mathematics and physics. So I'm kind of like in the gray area between them. But the physics that I do is relativity. The mathematics that I do is geometry.
I see. And like I've been told though that like because when I was younger, right, as a kid, I've been told that I'm not allowed being a physicist as a religious person.
Anybody can be a physicist. You're allowed to be a nope. You just might not be religious once you get too deep into it.
No, because I want to take theoretical physics.
Then do it.
Problem is I've always been scared of like my family's like judgment and how they would see me.
If they're judging you from getting an education, then that's on them. Like that's so stupid.
Not only that, like I feel like I'm being forced. Like I am religious, but not completely because like I also like some part of me just doesn't agree with like most of the things that are said. But like I have to put on this facade for my family for some reason.
Yeah. I wish I could sympathize, but I can't because I never had to do that. I was lucky. But this is to say, you know, I do feel for you, and I hope that they're accepting of any choices that you might make.
Because in reality, like I guess for me, I guess I'm also just arguing like why Jesus exists because, like, I guess I want to see another side. But in reality, like to my deep core, I'm an atheist. So, like, I don't believe in this God. I like to see what they see. That's what I like to see.
By the way, I'm going to actually I can't. So because you're on TikTok, I can't send you a link. However, after you go, send me a DM and ask for that paper about fine tuning because I did find it, and it has the information there, which is useful and interesting.
I have a question though. Are you like do you answer like your DMs oftenly? Because if you do, like
I obsessively do. I do it so much. I do it obsessively. So please don't abuse that power.
I see. I won't abuse it, but like I will be intrigued to like.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer DMs. I'm happy to take questions and stuff like that.
And also like just ask you for documents because I'm also curious on like a path plan, not a path plan, but just like how like the system works because I wanna because I'm gonna be taking the exam for getting accepted to Harvard.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Awesome. Do it.
And my question is, like, in terms of going to theoretical physics, like, what am I going to truly expect? I guess. Like,
Harvard is very hard. Like, famously hard. But they're also, like, the best of the best. So if you can do it, then, you know, that says something quite good about you, so.
I see. And in terms of, like, how would you explain, like, the university experience, though? Like, what was it like?
Well, I had a good time, but not everybody does. All I can say, and I should kick you off because this isn't Ask a Physicist Day, but my DMs are open. Make sure to not lose yourself and burn out. That's super important. I had friends I was hanging out with like all the time. You know, we were playing like Dungeons and Dragons, playing video games together. I was hanging out with the woman that I met, who is now my wife. Really important to not burn out. And then also take advantage of your professors. Go to your office hour. Go to the office hours. Ask them questions. They know more than you do, so you may as well take advantage of it.
All right, that makes sense.
But
And-
I'm gonna kick you out. But feel free to DM me, and I'm happy to help. Okay.
All right, everyone, have a great day. Bye.
All right. Take care. All right. Let's bring up Nathan. Nathan, can you hear me? Nathaniel. Nathan. Nathaniel. Nathan. Nathan. Oh, you're talking, it won't work. Try hanging up and I'll re-add you. Like, yeah. I can't hear you. My ears are not working, or your mic is failing. It's not working. None of it's working. Your mic is the smallest mic. You have the tiniest mic. I don't know, something like that. Obama. There he is. Hey, Nathan, can you hear me? I can. And now, the TikTok or the YouTube people should be able to.
Okay. Awesome.
Great. So what you got for me?
Well, one is I don't think I will ever, or anybody ever will be able to convince you, because like religion's always like a preferable thing. And then two, I'm not as caught up as you in science or relativity and all that. I like to bumble around. I love all science and stuff.
Nice.
But from what I know, at least like I just went through high school, I didn't do college. Like no one can actually prove God exists with science, and no one can disprove God exists.
Are you Christian, by the way?
No, I wouldn't call myself a Christian, but I do believe in Jesus. Now, the extent of what you would consider God, no.
If it was found out that Jesus didn't rise from the dead, would you still believe in God?
It's a good question. Yeah, I probably still believe in a God. Have hated with religion and all religions is it's mainly used for power and nothing more. That's why I personally like Jesus. I don't know if you were brought up, but there is paying the higher ups and buying animals to sacrifice to the gods so that they're all good. Jesus walks in, starts flipping tables, kicking them, cursing at people, and
so what kind of God do you believe
so that's the more
do you believe in? Do you still think that like God like cares about us?
Yes, but at the same time, he can't. Like, why does God send hurricanes and this and that? To me, I think God's more like so he created some people, gave it a set of rules, which you would consider relativity. I heard of that new being that did help a particle go through one slit.
Oh no! What movie was it?
Two, it wasn't a movie. This I don't know if this is accurate, but it's something where like
You're talking
when
about
you
the
were
double slit experiment.
Yes. That's the experiment
Famously
I'm talking
misunderstood, by
about.
the way. Yeah.
It is? Okay. So, from what I could get, I don't know why I'm saying you for sure know more. My idea of it is when you observe it, it acts like a particle. When you don't observe it, it acts more like a wave.
That's true, as long as you mean the right thing by observe. Observe does not mean a person look at it. Observe means a big thing interacts with it. Like a camera.
Video cam.
Or a camera, or a magnetic
video
field,
cam.
or like, yeah, it doesn't have to be a person, right?
Yeah. Okay. But it sort of, or why is it doing that? Why is it like you observe it or you look at it?
So
it's a particle,
essentially,
look away, it's more like a wave.
what you're doing is, well, it really depends on what your preferred interpretation of quantum mechanics is. But in the standard interpretation, you genuinely are changing it.
Okay, so it is changing.
It's undergoing something called waveform collapse.
States or okay.
When you measure it,
never heard.
It collapses. The wave. So you can think of it this way. Typically, it's a wave that's passing through, but when you measure it, it collapses to one point.
Okay. Do like a whole course to get the understanding of that. Definitely way more. But from what I've thought of, and you can tell me if this is the wrong idea or not.
I do.
And like how the map only renders things to a certain point where you're looking.
Sure.
Or whatnot. I'm not saying it's exactly 100% that, because clearly it's still there. But relatively of like sight, consciousness, being able to be aware of things around you and stuff like that. And so it's not some god that you pray to and he gives you shit. It's not a god that it's not does things by science and relativity. And then also, if he does it that way, he can't interact with it because then he would change it.
All I would say is that you don't get out of having you don't get out of having you don't save on rendering time in the universe because everything is constantly interacting with everything. So everything is always being measured, if you will.
Okay.
Because like for example, if something like a neutron star has a huge magnetic field, like, enormous magnetic field, and so like if a quantum wave passes by it, it'll collapse because it'll interact with the magnetic field.
Oh. Okay. Is until they contact something.
Until they contact something
it
big.
Can just be literally.
Basically, yeah. Yeah, so at least that's
big.
the standard interpretation. The standard interpretation is that there's some mysterious divide between small and big, and when a big thing interacts with the small thing collapses.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. My debate of it is that I think the God that most people are probably trying to come in here and show you isn't the God that I would necessarily believe in or even give 2 points. Guy a couple minutes ago and he was trying to like confirm the Earth's flat, and I'm like, well, if you could do like physical stuff to prove that's not real, and clearly it's not flat. But what I don't think they realize is that Bible they read was written by people that even the scientists, I think back in that day, thought the earth was flat. And it took a little bit
Well, there
before
weren't
they
scientists
realized,
back in the
oh,
day,
it's
that's
not
why.
flat, it's round. Yeah, true. I mean, obviously there were the first couple ones, but that's kind of what I meant. Like, no one, like, that's just what we assumed, but no one knew better or not. And so I've read a bit of the Quran, I've read a bit of other stuff, but I'm mainly Bible, Christianity. That's where my parents brought me up. Yeah, so I'm just, but a lot of it needs better interpretation because it was written in a time that everything was completely different. So to me, I feel like all the time when science comes up with some new thing, God's real, because this stuff does have to work sort of like you just talked with the last guy, where everything's so perfect, but I don't think everything's so perfecter than it is. And then that you also brought up that you can change it to a degree and have it still work. But I think it works very well in this circumference of God purposely making it the way it is today.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So like, you're thinking kind of like a simulator thing, right?
Almost.
But so why would he simulate a world that was like so shit?
Yeah. Well, it comes back to the freedom of choice thing.
I don't mean like the people doing bad things.
The reason why God.
There's earthquakes that kill people all the time.
Well, yeah. Well, this is that if everything was almost like perfect, where like nothing really bad happened, almost guaranteed, I think, not very good people in the world that there is today. As in, like, we just had the hurricane over by, like, Florida. I was pretty bad. No, North Carolina. My bad. I don't know why I said that. And it gives the ability for people that might not be in the best state for themselves, but to sacrifice what they have to go down there.
So you think that it's good that
hurricanes
happen?
Well, I think that's just part of the science, right? Like if I create a science thing where everything works, like ocean evaporate to make rain.
So like,
and with that comes consequences.
So I could program a simulation where you don't need hot air and cold air, and then there wouldn't be hurricanes in it, right? You only would have one temperature of air. So why couldn't he have done that? Like, why did he, like, I mean, presumably this is a smart guy. He knew what would happen based off of what his like, it's not like he just programmed it randomly and then just didn't know what would happen. Presumably he knew what was going to happen, right? So, like, he would have known the outcome of the various different configurations, and he chose the one that had earthquakes in it and hurricanes.
Yeah. So that would go into your guys' multiverse kind of theory. I don't know how close to that is to being real, but to my belief, I think it's many infinite being, right? Why is he going to send millions and millions of people like you, my good sir, if the Bible's read? You don't believe in God.
Why would I go to hell?
You're going to go to hell.
Good question.
Right?
I'm a decent dude.
Exactly. Right? So why would you go to hell? You're not murdering people, right? You just have your belief based on what was presented to you as you grew up and
just like
you made your decision, right? Just there's more simulations, and that's purposeful to find the one version of you that wants that
So wait a minute.
relationship
Do all the other
forever
versions
with
of me go to
God.
hell?
And so will cease to exist, like the atheists like to call it. You'll die, it'll be black, and there'll be nothing. And in another sense, too, when people talk about hell is just separation from God. There's no.
Well, it depends on who you ask. There are definitely a
lake
lot of
of
Christians who think
fire,
that you go to a lake of fire, right?
Yes, but
So,
I don't.
so hold on. Help me
really
understand
believe
this. So, are you actually like going all in on the simulation thing, or is it just like a metaphor?
Well, see, religion is half simulation, right? Because in the Bible, they say that this body that I am is just a vessel, and I'll be with my God in this nice new world heaven.
Well, the only reason I ask is because
so that would.
if I'm a simulator, if I'm like, oh, by the way, sorry, Ben, thank you for the enchilada gift, for $5 again. Like, let's say that I make a simulation, right? I make a simulation, like let's say I make a GTA 6, right? As you do. So I code up GTA 6, and you know, then one of my characters dies. How am I gonna bring that character out of the simulation? Like, how am I gonna take that character and what does that even mean? It's just a character. It's not real.
It's a. I guess if so. When I mean simulation, I don't mean like a legitimate simulation, but in the sense of like if I were to do a simulation to be everything and it felt 100% real, and I did my Harvard thing, I came out as a C student, middle class, right? And then I turned it off and I came out.
Oh, so you think that we already exist with God? But we're just
yes.
we're just a brain in a vat, and then he's gonna take our brain and put it in a real person. But you know what I mean. Something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So to me, what I think is, because in the main Bible point, it's God wants a relationship to these people, but he wants them to have. And so that's what I feel like the simulation is he's trying to find that person, that version of you or me or whoever that does want to have that relationship with him. Like, they don't want a relationship with me, that's fine. They could just not exist, and then that's it. You know, but they existed in the simulation for sure.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I understand.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
good.
Yeah. So, like, I guess I just don't understand, like, why. It seems like this belief has a lot of extra stuff added on top of it beyond just believing that our universe exists. So why should I believe that? Well, yeah.
Doesn't every religion?
I mean, that's the point.
I mean, you gotta have some
can it explain anything that we otherwise can't explain otherwise? Sorry, I said otherwise twice.
I mean, no, it's the same proposal. The only discovery ever just proves that God's real than what most religions would say, oh, that's wrong because of whatever.
You're not making any predictions. You're making postdictions, right? So you wouldn't have made this claimed this idea about like the simulation before quantum mechanics was discovered, for example, right?
No.
And so what you're doing is the view that you hold now is based off of things that you already know are true about the real world. And so unless you can actually make a prediction, like if this worldview is true, then XYZ discovery will be made in the future. If you can do that and then it comes true, that would be good evidence. But unless you can do that, it's just not so compelling, because the worldview that you put together was kind of put together in an ad hoc way to be compatible with the world that we see.
Yeah. Okay, I get that. But okay, I guess that was another thing I want to bring up. Was only those with faith shall enter. So here, right? I'm assuming you believe in the Big Bang, and then evolution, whatever, right?
Well, I don't believe
And then
that.
nothing. Well, okay, yeah, it's not nothing, right? It's like a speck of like everything in
Something
a
like
giant
that. Something like that.
gravitational pull, right? Yeah, it's kind of everything, but also nothing at the same time. You know, it's just this speck of nothingness and this empty vast of nothingness, and you have your belief, you go through the science, all that's that. Then you die and you go back to nothing.
Yep.
Correct? Okay, so you have to have a faith base.
So to be clear, my position isn't that there was nothing ever.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and then
spec,
before the spec,
right?
there was just more universe.
Okay, maybe I haven't heard that.
So my position, so
new
the
version.
way I lean, I don't know, like this hasn't been proven, but this is the way I lean because we just don't know, is that the universe expands and then recollapses, and then it expands and then recollapses over and over again.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like that. That makes sense to me. I don't know if the black hole shooting out that star is really, I could see that happening, you know, things collapsing into a very tight space and then leaving that space or whatever you want to call it, speck. Also, still does the thing to you, there was a universe before, but we could never really, like, do you think we could scientifically prove that
If it's
that
true, yeah.
universe
Absolutely.
before?
If it's true, yeah.
Well, if it's true.
If it's not true, then we wouldn't expect to find any evidence for it.
What would you... Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Somewhere down the line, wherever it is.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess in a sense, then you have a little more faith.
Well, I just think I'm right. I just think I'm
do.
right. And so, like, I have a hypothesis that I think is true. And so if it is true, then it should have evidence. But if the evidence doesn't come, then I'd have to adjust my hypothesis. I'd have to, you know, admit I was wrong and move on. No, well, there's some evidence.
But it's
just
not here
like
now.
Evidence.
Okay. And I mean, same with Christianity. I mean, there's a little evidence. You have Jesus, he rose from the dead. A bunch of people saw.
I don't know if a bunch of people actually saw a man rise from the dead, though.
Well, exactly. Just like I don't know if there was a universe before our universe. There's a couple of things that you could give me to say yes, that is all disciples that were willing to be put on a cross, their head cut off, all sorts of torturous things, and the one thing they had to say was, Jesus isn't real and God's real. So either
careful. We don't actually know how we don't actually know how any of them except like 2 of them died. No?
No, I think it's all.
No, it's just church tradition.
All documented on how all of them died.
There's like 2 of them. I think it's Peter and James, maybe, or Paul and James that we have documents that say that says that they actually were executed by the Romans, but like the rest of it is just church tradition.
From the research I've done, and I can't pull it up now, I'm not on a computer,
You're
I'm
fine.
on my phone, and I actually don't even have a computer. But from what I've known, there of them, I could understand definitely some of them not
No,
being
for the
there
vast
because
like
it's a long
I think,
time ago.
I think there's exactly 2 that we have evidence for. And for those 2, we don't even know how they died, just that they were executed.
Okay. Okay, I'll have to do my research on it, but still in the vein, what I was trying to say was when you said, oh, I'm coming up with these things and have if this is proven that you believe anything that doesn't have a smoking gun to be proven, and until it is proven, you have to change your idea, but you haven't changed your idea, and it hasn't been
I didn't
proven
start believing
yet.
this until a year ago, and the reason I started believing this was because there was some tentative evidence that made this more likely. It's definitely not smoking gun evidence. It's definitely not confirmatory evidence. It's just the kind of evidence that makes this option available, and it makes it go from 0% to maybe, I don't know, not 0% possible. And so I'm
Okay.
I'm not like dogmatic on this. Like if I'm wrong about this, I'm happy to be wrong about it. It's just kind of the way I lean, if you will.
Okay. Right, but from my reasoning, and I do believe there is some kind of creator or a god. I just don't really believe the religions have really gotten it right because people tend to
Sure, I understand that.
screw. Yeah. So I guess in mine, the reason why to me it could never be proven in my belief is because in the Bible it says, you have him. So if God was ever to be proven, right? If science was ever like, oh, yep, there's a God and here's why, right? And then all atheists and then now it defeats his whole purpose. He wants you to find him in your own personal way. You want to so-called intel. Known, which is why I think the world we live in is so complicated with physics, and then you have the quantum, and then they're kind of we're trying to figure that out now, but to me, that's why it's all so complicated, is because he couldn't just make it very simple and clear that, hey, I'm a god and I'm here. Yeah, he could have, and then that would have ruined the thing. You'd be like,
why would it ruin anything?
I put you in, because now I don't have a genuine relationship with you.
Hold on. We've been very, very nice. That was very dumb. That was dumb, Nathan. And let me explain why. Let's say, and I love using this analogy. Let's say that I'm married, by the way, so this counts. It doesn't count. Let's say that I want a relationship with Scarlett Johansson, right? Let's just say I want that. It's something that I want for me. I just want to be friends with her, right? Nothing nefarious. Nothing nefarious. Would it be reasonable for me to expect her? To just expect that of her, like right now?
Well, I never said anybody is expecting anybody to do anything.
Would it be would it be reasonable for me to think?
No, it would not make any sense for you to expect her to go out of her way to.
So she can't even she can't freely choose to have a friendship with me, right? So in fact, by not giving her the full information, she has fewer choices, right? Because without the information that I exist, she doesn't have the choice to be my friend.
Well, that would just be a relationship with.
Typically,
That's why he wants you to find him in your own way. In the Bible, it says, right, okay, here's a good argument that atheist says, what about the way to heaven? And he never got told, and, you know, he lived a pretty good life and died. Does he get to go to heaven?
I mean, like, you can make that argument, but
many would say,
but what I'm saying
yes,
is that if,
and the reason.
So God knows what would convince me, right? Okay.
Yeah, he does.
So he knows that the things that I've seen just have not been convincing to me. The signs that he's sent, the people that have talked to me, all of that stuff, it just hasn't been enough for me. And so as it stands right now, I mean, he knows that I don't have the choice to have a relationship with him.
The choice?
I don't have the choice because I don't even know he exists. Like there's two steps, right? In order to have a relationship, in order to choose a relationship with him, I first have to know he exists. I can't even choose a relationship if I don't know he exists.
Yeah, I mean,
it seems like by not
but
giving me the extra information, he's actually not letting me make the choice for myself.
I mean, I don't know. I think he still is.
Wouldn't you say? Aren't
I
you
mean,
supposed to have? Aren't
in
you supposed
science
to have
terms, right? I mean, religious. Yeah, he is supposed to have somewhat everything.
I mean, he has more. He has more.
But that's not me.
No, the religious guy who crosses his heart on it.
God himself.
He has more of a choice. Because he at least knows that God exists. No. So he knows that God exists. And so he has a choice to either have a relationship with him or not. Okay, well,
he doesn't know.
He has been convinced.
He chooses to believe in
let me rephrase. He has been convinced that God is real.
Yeah.
So once he's been convinced of that, he can make a choice to enter into a relationship. But without having been convinced that the other party exists, this would be like saying, why don't you have a relationship with Bigfoot? Well, how could I even conceive of having a relationship with Bigfoot if I don't think Bigfoot exists?
But I think also, too, you get it screwed because you're using these examples as if God's Bigfoot. Like, what is Bigfoot in the woods? And people are like, it's
what
real.
I'm saying,
like, we're talking about an omnipotent being that creates.
What I'm saying is that I don't have enough information to make a choice.
So that, I mean,
like,
it's
we typically
totally
think,
different.
Apparently not.
Literally brought up the entire world.
Apparently not.
That says there's a.
Well, yeah, apparently I don't have enough information. Like, I haven't been given enough information to make an informed choice. Like, okay, let me give a different example.
Information, facts.
Let me give a different example.
Science. I like most science.
Can I give a different example? Maybe that'll help illustrate my point better. So, let's say that I have. Let's say that I'm trying to buy a house, right? And I go to the real estate agent, and I'm like, I want to buy a house. This is my budget. This is, this is what I want, whatever. Real estate agent says, kind of being nefarious. They say,
okay,
there's only one house that matches your description. And I'm like, well, if there's only one house. I go look at it. I guess that's the house I'm going to buy. But the real estate agent was being sneaky. The real estate agent knew that if I bought that house, they'd get a bigger commission. But there was another house that also met my criteria. They just didn't tell me about it. But because they didn't tell me about the other house, now I don't even have, I couldn't even make that choice. Even if I had wanted to make that choice, I didn't have that choice available to me because I didn't have all of the information. The same is true in this case. I don't have all of the available information. Even if God was real, I would want to know that. But because I don't have all of the available information, I can't even make the choice to have that relationship.
Well, do you have all the information that science could ever offer?
I don't know, maybe. Well, I
It's
mean, but the
gonna
point is
be
that
like,
the
right? They're
God,
gonna look at
remember,
us like we look at Newton
so you mean
and how
so wait,
they
hold on,
live.
just to be clear,
So what
they're
I'm
not,
saying
because they're
is,
not going to look back at me and be like, what a nerd virgin, and that's how we look at Newton today.
what?
Newton was a nerd.
Uh,
Newton was a nerd
I'm
virgin, and we should all make fun of him for it.
okay. I mean, maybe to you, dude. I mean, maybe to you. Don't put that in my mouth.
he absolutely was a
For
nerd.
his time.
He absolutely was a nerd, and he was also a virgin.
Okay, yeah. So what if he was a nerd? So what if he didn't get bitches? I'm not gonna judge you.
You should.
Because
You should
get
judge
no
him. He was an
bitches or you're a
incel.
nerd.
He was a very smart
Okay.
incel, but he was an incel.
Well, there you go. He was smart. I mean, that's all I care. I mean, if you judge everything off of everybody off of everything that they did, good or bad, no one's good and everyone is completely.
I don't know, man. Bro was maidenless.
That's fine. Like, to me, I could care less if he was maidenless or what did he do in his life. What did he do? He was a genius that figured out like a couple of small things, you know. But like I said, you're a scientist. You're a science man, whatever.
Yeah. It's just a bit. Don't take it too seriously. So what I'm saying is that I don't think we'll get evidence from science about God ever. But what God could send other forms of evidence to me, stuff that he knows would convince me.
Well, are you just not?
I have these discussions all the time. I'm looking.
You said I went to a. This is a one. Okay, well then you need to do like soul searching in a sense.
Yeah.
Have you ever read the Bible
several times? I actually haven't finished the Christian Bible.
Okay,
I'm halfway through. Not halfway through. I'm like halfway through the Gospels.
Okay. And I'm assuming you're reading them, right? And you're atheist at the time of reading it, right? And so, let me read this and prove to me in this book that God reads.
No, I'm just reading it because, I ought to know what people believe, right? Although, to be fair,
awesome. No, that's what I look to.
It's so boring.
Yes. It's
why
boring
do people are like,
oh,
it's my favorite book. I love it. Like, it's so boring.
It's super on morals if you can put things in a certain context. Like there's a passage that Paul writes a letter to people and he's like, do not let your women speak. They look into the context. The entire world back in that day was completely sexist and women didn't have an education. And then Jesus came around and said, no, women,
but Paul said that they can't.
But now...
But Paul said that they can't.
He did, but he also wrote a letter to a group of people that says, make the women sit down and not preach. They don't know what they're saying. And a lot of people point this, but what people don't know
they were all
is that
sexist.
Women back in that day...
Including Paul.
Yeah, but women back in that day had... Yes. An education. So when he was stating that, he was trying to say, like, hey, go out and get an education before you just start splatting out random shit.
Well, to be fair,
you guys need to learn first.
Right. I'm pretty sure that, like,
to be fair, most people
no, Paul did, right? He was educated. But, like, John was a fisherman.
Yes,
right?
Paul used
he wasn't
to be.
Educated.
Yes.
That's my favorite thing to do. No, I'm kidding. Just slay. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, that's what he was back then.
It's just that, I mean, look, like, a
Um,
job's a job, okay? A paycheck's a paycheck.
Exactly. And he had what I would consider, the spiritual
Wait a minute. Why
enlightenment
can't I
that
have
he
that?
needed that made him eventually do crazed lunatic and
Hold on,
for
are you telling me? Hold
the
on.
world
Hold on.
nowadays.
Hold on. Are you telling me if I want to have a spiritual experience like Paul did, I need to go unalive Christian? Is that what you're telling me?
No, I'm not telling you what I was saying and assume that. No. Okay, two, total different world nowadays, dude. I could send a
No, you can't.
message to dude
No,
in
you
North
can't. They
Korea.
don't have internet.
I could talk. That's true. I mean, maybe South
Okay, there you
Korea.
go.
You're correct. My bad. I'm not making up political stuff, but yes, you're correct. I probably can't send shit to North Korea back then.
Yep.
And so, to me, God knew what Paul needed to be, as in the Bible he was, and so had to do what he had to do to make him believe so that he would do what he wanted him. On the other hand, when the last, right, Revelation, which was the last book, was written so many fucking years ago, it's insane.
Yeah, there are.
And there's not
like,
one more book after
there
that.
There are more books after that. You just don't think they're true. Well, that's just...
No, they're just not connected
Well, no, they
to the
are.
Bible.
They are written, like the actual books, they are very...
Are you talking about the old ones? Like the Book of Eden? Oh, that shit's fucking...
But like
yeah.
If you were a Jewish person,
yeah, I could see they have it
in the year 150 CE or AD or whatever, you'd be like, what are all these new Christian books? They're not connected to the Bible. They were written hundreds or thousands of years after. It's just the Book of Mormon is the same thing. It was just written like, 1700 years after the Christian Bible.
Yeah, and then there's how many years since a new legitimate book has been written.
The Book
I mean,
of Mormon
other than
like
maybe some guy online 200 years ago.
200 years. But then then there's the Baha'i faith, which was like the late 1800s, early 1900s that developed. And like they had their last prophet quite recently, like 100 years ago. And there's like
some weird term of last prophet.
Well, no. So I say last prophet.
None of that makes sense to me. Yeah. I get that. I lost my train of thought. But basically, what I think, for you, if you even, I'm assuming you're doing this just
generally,
because
but it is an interesting
to you
topic
it's
for me.
fun
And,
to do.
It's true. It's one of the most important things that you can learn, right?
Yes, I definitely think so.
In a sense, I genuinely would like to know if it's true.
Well, see, that's the thing. With religion and God, my story, this is why I believe in this, right? And you could go, oh, that's great, but it does no good for you, right? And then again, scientific, because I feel like if God created a world and didn't want people to prove that he exists so that his free will concept would work, he'd make it so you could never prove that it was real. What you would have to do is you'd have to go into the real world and you'd have to actually look at it as if
so
you
I have to believe in a God first in order to believe in a God?
So instead of looking at it and be like, I don't believe in a God, perspective of reading. When I read the Bible and I go, God's not real, this is bullshit, what are these people believing in? And I read it, I go, this is a whole lot of nothingness. This is dumb. But when I go and God does exist, in my mind, in my perspective of looking at this book, and I'm going to read read it and see my perspective and look it through the lens as if I did believe in a God. And then it would fit where God would make
So
sense.
help me out here.
Which one of them
Have
would
you done
be?
that with the other books?
Okay.
With like the
I've
Quran
done
and
some
Book
of it,
and
yes.
Book of Nephi and all those books?
Which
ones?
Like, I haven't read it, like, the full of any, but my grandma used to be Mormon. The Bible, in a sense, they changed some things around, and then obviously
the extra stuff is that the real Israelites were the Native Americans, and then they went to New York for some reason. It's very silly, and I'm sure you can agree.
But again, that's why, yeah, and I also agree with you that it's very silly. I just didn't want to say that. You also have to read these things in a perspective. Is the human mind is making this and writing it down. It's the same thing as me having a conversation with you. Guy named Paul, and he did this thing, and he did, like, you could read all that, and you're gonna get the same shit that I just told you, and it doesn't do anything, because if it did, it would have been done when I told you.
So if you were reading the Book of Mormon, you wouldn't believe it's true while reading it, because you know it's kind of silly. But you might still read it, because it's interesting, right?
No, I could read it as if God is real. Well, it's gonna be 100% real, and God did everything.
But
it's like, no,
the thing is that's
like,
silly
God's
to me.
real. Let me read this, and
so
then
like it's very hard for me to turn that belief off, right? Because it's just kind of like obviously silly.
Perspective. It was kind of like you
which
can
God am I supposed to
see the same things and see different results in different perspectives. Well, just like how I said, I'm a creator, someone that created something, but the Bible doesn't explain them very well. It explains them well for people that it works for. The Quran doesn't explain them well, but it works for well. I think the only thing you can get really out of the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, the whatever you want to read is testimonies.
So is it even worth reading?
That's all it pretty much is. Yeah, I think it's definitely worth reading. There's a lot of good moral things in most religion.
There's also some really bad stuff.
You know, like that's... There is, and that's why I said when you read it, you guys are...
But hold on, so let's think about this for a minute. So the way that we tell which parts to ignore, because, you know, context, and which parts are good, is through the morality that we already have. So it seems like we don't actually get anything new from the Bible.
Well, no. If you know the whole Bible,
no, I mean, like let's say
I've
never read the Bible.
I mean,
but I have some sense of morality.
You've never read the Bible.
I have a sense of morality, whether or not I've read the Bible. So I would read the Bible, understanding that it was written by people, and there'd be parts that I like and parts that I don't like. But I'm not going to learn anything new. I'm not going to learn any new moral truths from it, because I already know that I'm going to dismiss some of the things that disagree with my morals, and I'm going to agree with some of the other things that agree with my morals. So I don't gain anything from it.
Yeah, you don't gain anything. I mean, I guess
look,
if you're
I wasn't perfectly moral, then I would just agree with the bad things in the Bible and disagree with the good things. And then I wouldn't learn it. And then I wouldn't learn anything. I still wouldn't learn anything.
I mean, I guess it definitely opens up a different perspective on things for me, and I go, oh wow, I never really looked at it.
And I'm genuinely curious. Could you give me an example of like some moral truth that you learned from the Bible that, you know, you didn't know before?
What do you want, as in like
that
moral,
such and such a thing
like,
is bad,
don't
and
kill.
you used to think it was good, or vice versa?
That, as in, oh, I thought this was good, and then now I do it,
Or
and
maybe you think
now
that
it's
something that was
bad.
bad is extra
Um,
bad, or something that was good is less good, or...
No,
Well, that's
there's
not
nothing
true.
actually
Murder is
means put
definitely...
a
Hold
scale.
on. That's dumb. Murder is definitely worse than lying.
I mean, it
No,
kind
it
of
doesn't
depends.
depend.
What's
What
your
the
lie,
fuck?
and what are the
What?
consequences?
What? Murder and lying? What?
Uh, okay, so if you were walking through a field, and your war just recently happened, and I know that there's a minefield right in front of you, and you go, hey man, I'm new here, and I heard there might be minefields around. Is there any in front of me? And I looked at you. I didn't murder you. I didn't kill you. I simply lied.
Why that's
blew you
bad.
up. So what is the
reason why
lie
that's
you're
bad is
telling?
because they died, not because the lie. That's the murder.
The lying is bad. That's
The
why
lying
you
is
shouldn't
bad.
lie. You should tell
Murdering
people
is
the
worse.
truth.
There was a reason you had to ensure that the lie led to a murder in order to make it bad. Because murder is worse than lying. Like,
Wait,
everybody
so
knows this.
to you, lying's good. So for
Well,
to you, lying's good. Like any kind of lying,
Well,
just
hold on,
all
hold on.
right.
That's a straw man.
That's fine.
That's a straw man.
Everybody should lie,
Lying is
and
good
they should do it all the time. Told you that
What?
all things can be the same. Now there could be different degrees of it. I could lie to you and
That's all I
get
was
you
saying.
murdered.
Hold on. You said
Or
that
I
all
could
things.
lie to
You
you
said that
and
bad
just
things are bad and good things are
give
good,
you
and that
some
there's no
dumb
difference.
lie.
But like some things
bad
are
and
some
murdering
things are,
is bad.
some things are worse than other things, right? Okay, and
Yes,
lying isn't always
but
bad,
it's
right?
still bad. That was my
and-
statement. My statement was
and
things
not- and
that are
lying
bad
isn't
are
always
bad.
bad,
Things
right?
that are good. A lying is always
All
bad.
right, hold on. Here's the litmus test. We gotta know.
It'll
Hold on,
only.
we gotta know.
It'll
We gotta know. Nathan. Okay. It's 1940. It's 1942. You're a citizen in Berlin. The SS come knocking. They say, "Hey, we heard that your neighbor's Jewish." Are they? What do you say? And they are Jewish, by the way. So lying's good in that case.
I mean, I'm gonna say no. In a case, yeah, but also at the same time, letting people or letting a man or that whole situation's hard because shit like that probably won't happen, but it also easily can happen.
Well, wouldn't you know?
Oh yeah, that
we did do that. We're also sending people to Guantanamo Bay now.
Put them in gas chambers and throw children up in the air and shoot them in a fucking
Careful. We are, in principle, we are broadcasting on TikTok, and so, you got to be a little bit careful.
Oh, I am. Yeah.
No, it's fine. It's understandable.
So I apologize for that. But again, right? I mean, there's a degree to it. I definitely do not believe that what we did to the Chinese and Japanese at that time.
I'm glad.
Was right.
I'm glad that we're on the same in the same boats. I'm just worried about the future. But anyway, Nathan, it is past 11 o'clock, which is the time when I usually end my stream. So I'm going to let you go. Is there anything else you want to say before I let you go?
Yeah, so like a simple thing, that question you asked me, one of the verses that I got, you can read it on your own, which Psalms is heavy of it. Psalms 39,
which one is this?
verse 2. It says this, I was dumb with silence, I held my peace even from good, and my sorrow was stirred.
Okay.
So I guess in a sense it's not morality in a sense of you being, but you can learn good things. like how a foolish man speaks all the time, and you're like, you're dumb. You should look back and maybe think about what you say before you say. That's what the Bible can teach you. Things that are good to know. It's not necessarily moral based.
Yeah. No. I mean, sure, there probably are like interesting metaphors and stuff. But yeah, well, so Nathan, I'm gonna let you go because I said I would. But thanks for being here. I do appreciate you.
Hey, yeah, thank you for letting me talk. I appreciate it. I like having these kind of talks about stuff.
Thanks
So
for being
keep
here.
doing what you're doing, man.
Now, for everybody who's been waiting, sorry, but it is time that I gotta end the live. So I'm gonna let everybody go. But thank you guys for being here. And I will see you guys. I will be on somebody else's live tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific time on J.E. Schneider's channel on TikTok. JESCHNEIDER at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So come hang out. I don't know what it's going to be. I think it's just an interview, like kind of podcast-ish. And we'll see how it goes. But I'll see you guys there. And make sure to like and subscribe and all of these lovely things. Take care, everybody.